8 years. 8 years since Victoria discovered that Dylan had faked his death and disappeared into the shadows. 8 years of peace, of growth, of happiness built on solid foundations. The lighthouse thrived. Thomas flourished. Life went on. On a cold October afternoon, her phone rang. She never imagined that Torment would return. Victoria's life had moved on after everything she'd experienced in just a few weeks with Dylan back like that. But it was over. He had died again for her. Victoria and Caleb's wedding took place in December 2018 as planned. Small, intimate, perfect. Thomas was the page boy, carrying the rings with lovely seriousness. Eleanor was there, now fully integrated into the family Dylan had abandoned. At the ceremony, when the time came to say their vows, Victoria held Caleb's hands and said, "You taught me that true love isn't dramatic or explosive. It's constant. It's showing up day after day, in the beautiful moments and the difficult ones. It's choosing to stay when it would be easier to go. You chose us, Thomas and I, when you didn't have to. And that means more than any vow I could make here today. But I do it anyway. I choose you. Today, tomorrow, always." There wasn't a dry eye in the small chapel when they became husband and wife. Thomas, who rarely displayed physical affection, spontaneously embraced Caleb. "Daddy," he said simply. It was the first time he'd called Caleb that, and it was official now. Not just in his heart, but on paper. Caleb was legally adopting Thomas. He would be his father in every way that mattered. That night, at the reception on the terrace of the Vendu Hotel overlooking Charleston Harbor, Victoria looked around at all the people she loved. Sarah, her best friend since forever. Evelyn, who had believed in her when she was just an impossible dream. Margaret, who had given her the first space when no one else would. Patricia, Carmen, Jennifer, Rachel, all the mothers who had become sisters in their shared struggle. And Caleb, her husband now, the man who had appeared by accident and stayed by choice. "What are you thinking?" he asked, coming up behind her and wrapping his arms around her. "That Dylan did something good, even if he didn't mean to." "What?" "By leaving, by disappearing completely. He made room for you, for this." She gestured to the celebration around them. "If he had remained a lukewarm husband, a half-present father, I might never have met you. I might never have built a lighthouse. I might never have discovered my strength. You've always had that strength." "Maybe, but I had to lose him to find it." Across the terrace, Thomas played the piano for the guests, a piece he'd composed himself, full of complex mathematical patterns only he understood, but which sounded beautiful nonetheless. "Our son is incredible," Caleb said, and Victoria loved that he said our. "Yes, he is. And we're going to give him the best life possible. We already are." In October, she scheduled a special event at the original lighthouse, a celebration of 3 years since its opening, but also a tribute. 3 years ago," she began, speaking to a room full of families lighthouse had served, "I was at the lowest point of my life. Abandoned, broke, alone, with a son the world told me was broken. I could have given up. Many people would have." She looked around the room, seeing the faces of all the mothers who had their own stories of abandonment and resilience. "But I didn't give up. And you, each and every one of you, didn't give up. And together, we created something that transcends a therapy center. We created a community, a family, a place where no mother has to struggle alone." Applause filled the room. "Today, I want to announce something new. The Lighthouse Mentoring Program, where veteran mothers who have already been through the hardest parts of their journey mentor new mothers who are just starting out, because no one should have to figure it all out alone. No one should have to feel the isolation we all felt in the beginning." Patricia stood. "I volunteer. I want to be a mentor. I want to help another mother the way Victoria helped me." Then Carmen stood up. Then Jennifer. Then Rachel. One by one, mothers who had been helped volunteered to help others. "This," Victoria said through tears, "this is Lighthouse. It's not me. It's all of us. It's not exactly. I still wish Thomas had had a father. I still wish we hadn't gone through that pain. But," she paused, searching for the right words, "but I'm grateful for what I built from that pain, for the lives we changed, for the proof that the worst moments can become catalysts for the greatest transformations. You turned tragedy into legacy. We did, Victoria corrected. You, me, all the people who believed. Thomas, who gave me reason to fight. They climbed to the rooftop, still their favorite spot, and looked out over Charleston at dusk. The city where so much had fallen. The city where everything had been rebuilt, stronger than before. Ready for the next chapter? Caleb asked. More than ready. Marriage. Official family. Continuing to expand Lighthouse. Watching Thomas grow and reach his potential. Helping more families. Victoria smiled. There's so much future waiting. And no past holding you back. No, the past held its power, but I chose to release it. I chose to forgive, not because they deserved it, but because I deserved peace. And now I have it. The sun set over Charleston, painting the sky orange and pink. And on that rooftop, a woman who had lost everything and rebuilt something greater stood with the man who chose to love her through it all, planning a future that shone as brightly as the setting sun. 3 years ago, in a diagnostic room, Victoria's world had crumbled. Today, she had built a new world. A world where children like Thomas weren't seen as broken, but as different. Where mothers struggled not alone, but in community. Where true love wasn't defined by biology, but by choice. The choice to stay, to fight, to not give up when the going gets tough. The lighthouse shone over Charleston, and it would continue to shine for generations. Because true love always finds a way, even through the deepest darkness. Especially through it, love multiplied through community. After the event, Victoria walked through the empty center with Caleb. She touched the walls she'd painted with her own hands 3 years ago. She looked at the sensory area she'd designed with Thomas in mind. She saw pictures on the walls of all the children who'd passed through there, each progressing in their own way. You know what's weird, she said to Caleb. If Dylan hadn't abandoned us, none of this would exist. The lighthouse, the statewide network, all these families being helped. It wouldn't have happened if he had stayed. Are you saying you're grateful he left? The silence confirmed what her heart felt. Life went on. The lighthouse grew. Thomas flourished. Victoria and Caleb built a beautiful life together. Dylan Torres was a name rarely mentioned, a distant memory, a ghost from the past that held no power over the present. Until, 8 years later, a phone rang, and a familiar voice said, "Victoria, it's me, Dylan. I'm sick, Vic, very sick. And I have no one else." The call that changed everything. Charleston, South Carolina, October 2024. The rain was beating down on the office windows when Victoria's phone rang. An unknown number. She almost didn't answer it. She was reviewing the final proposal for the Unsupported Mothers Project, the most ambitious initiative Lighthouse had ever undertaken. 25 major companies, $10 million, thousands of lives to be transformed. But something made her answer. "Victoria, it's me, Dylan." The world stopped. Her heart stopped. That voice, that damned voice she hadn't heard in 8 years. "I know I don't have the right to call, but..." He coughed, a deep, hoarse cough. "I'm sick, Vic, very sick, and I have no one else." Victoria gripped the phone so tightly her fingers turned white. Dylan, the man who had faked his death 8 years ago, who had disappeared, leaving debts, arrest warrants, and a broken mother. "Are you kidding me?" The words came out cold. "I know what you're thinking. About last time. But it's different now, I swear. It's real this time. Real? Like the last time you faked cancer to manipulate money and disappear." Heavy silence. Then, "I deserve this. I deserve your anger. But Vic, I'm begging you. I'm really dying right now. Stage 4 lung cancer. I didn't fake tests this time. I'm not running from anyone. I'm at the end." Victoria looked out the window at the lighthouse courtyard where Thomas, now 15, played the piano outdoors under a canopy. Her son had grown so much. He was tall, thin, still had his biological father's wavy brown hair, but her green eyes. He wore headphones as he played, lost in the music. Thomas didn't know his father. He called Caleb Daddy for 8 years. He was happy, stable, an internationally recognized piano prodigy, about to embark on his first European tour. And now this. Why are you calling me? Victoria asked, her voice weary. Because I'm scared of dying alone. Because I messed up and I have no one. And because... Her voice broke. Because I want to meet my son before I go. Just once. Just so he knows I existed. He knows you existed. And he knows you chose not to exist for him. Please, Vic. I know I don't deserve it, but I'm not asking for myself. I'm asking for Thomas's right to know his biological father, even if it's just for a few days. Victoria hung up the phone. She stared at the screen for long minutes, her hands shaking, her heart racing. Caleb entered the office, saw her expression. What happened? He asked immediately, coming over to her. Dylan called. Caleb's expression hardened. Dylan, he says he's dying. For real this time. He wants to meet Thomas before he dies. Absolutely not. Caleb's answer was instant, definitive. He has no right. He abandoned Thomas. He pretended to die. He disappeared. And now he wants to come back and mess up our son's life. No. I know. I know all that. But what? Caleb was visibly distraught now. You're not considering this, are you? I don't know what I'm considering. I'm still processing that he's alive. Vic, look at me. Caleb gently grabbed her shoulders. I'm Thomas's father, legally and emotionally. I've been here for every sensory crisis, every achievement, every piano performance. I'm his father, not Dylan. I know. Caleb, I know. Tears burned her eyes. You're his father in every way that matters. But legally, Thomas still has another living biological father. And if he ever finds out I had the chance to let him meet his biological father and chose not to give him that chance, you're protecting him. Or am I protecting myself? Protecting you? Protecting our comfortable life. Victoria pulled away, running her hands through her hair. Thomas is almost at the age where he'll start asking deeper questions about identity, about where he came from. What if he needs those answers? What if denying him now is something he'll never forgive me for? Or, Caleb said carefully, he meets Dylan, and Dylan disappoints him again. Or worse, Dylan dies, and Thomas is traumatized by forming a connection only to immediately lose it. They were both right. They were both wrong. There was no easy answer. I need to check if he's telling the truth this time, Victoria finally decided. Before I consider anything, I need to know if he's truly ill or if this is another manipulation. Victoria spent the next 3 days investigating. She called hospitals, checked public records, and used the connections she developed over the years in the South Carolina healthcare system. And she found the truth. Dylan Torres was, indeed, admitted to Providence Hospital in Columbia. The diagnosis was confirmed. Small cell lung carcinoma, stage IVB. Metastasis to the brain, liver, and bones. Prognosis, 3 to 6 weeks. This time it was real. I found him, she told Eleanor over the phone. Her former mother-in-law had become a constant and beloved grandmother in Thomas's life. But Dylan's name was never mentioned. It was as if he had actually died 8 years ago. Eleanor couldn't even finish the question. He's dying. For real this time. He wants to see Thomas. A long silence. Then, surprisingly, does he deserve it? No, but maybe Thomas deserves the choice. Thomas is a child. 15, yes, but still a child. And an autistic child who functions best with routine, stability, predictability. Bringing Dylan back now would be devastating, Victoria finished. I know, but hiding it could also be devastating. If he finds out when he's older that his biological father died and no one gave him a chance to decide. You're really considering it. It wasn't a question. I am. God help me, I am. Eleanor sighed deeply. If you do this, if there are conditions, so many conditions, and I need to see my son first. I need to look him in the eye and know if this is manipulation again or if there's something genuine this time. Would you see him? After everything. He's my son, Victoria. A terrible, lying, cowardly son. But he's still my son. And if he's really dying... Her voice broke. Then I need to make peace with that before it's too late. 3 days later, Victoria and Eleanor made the 2-hour drive to Columbia. Providence Hospital was smaller than MUSC, older, with hallways that smelled of harsh disinfectant and wilted flowers. Dylan was in room 412. The nurse warned them before they entered. "He's conscious today, but weak. Please don't overexert him." The door opened, and there he was. This time, there was no doubt. Dylan Torres was dying. He had lost so much weight, he was almost unrecognizable. His hair had fallen out, presumably from chemotherapy. His skin had that grayish pallor of someone whose body was shutting down. Oxygen tubes in his nose, and 4 line in his arm. A heart monitor beeping softly. But his eyes were still the same. And when they saw Eleanor, they filled with tears. "Mom," he whispered. Eleanor froze in the doorway. Victoria saw the conflict on the older woman's face. Anger, love, pain, all mixed into one devastating expression. "Hello, Dylan," Eleanor said finally, her voice controlled. "You came. I came to check if you're telling the truth this time. If you're really sick or if this is another elaborate hoax." Dylan grimaced with what might have been an attempt at a smile. "Did you check the medical records?" "We did," Victoria said, speaking for the first time. She was still in the doorway, unable to force herself to enter fully. "Stage 4 lung cancer. Real this time." "Real this time," he echoed bitterly. "Ironic, isn't it? I pretended to die 8 years ago and escaped. Now I'm really dying and no one believes me." "You created this situation," Eleanor said mercilessly. "Actions have consequences." "I know. Believe me, Mom, I know." He coughed a wet, painful sound. The nurse came in quickly, adjusted something on his fore, and wiped his mouth with a cloth. When she left, Dylan continued, his voice weaker. "I spent 8 years running. From creditors, from the police, from shame. I lived like a ghost, always looking over my shoulder. And for what? I ended up here anyway. Alone. Dying. With nothing to show for it but regrets." "Why did you do that?" Victoria asked, finally entering the room, but keeping her distance. 8 years ago. Why fake cancer? Why not just disappear without all that charade?" Dylan looked down at his skeletal hands. "Because I'm a coward. Always have been. I wanted your sympathy. Maybe some money. One last connection to something real in my life before I disappeared completely. I owed a lot of money to very dangerous people. I thought if you thought I was dying, maybe I'd pay your debts," Victoria finished. "For Thomas's sake, out of respect for his father." "Yes, I know how that sounds. I know the kind of person it makes me. A manipulator, a liar, a man who uses even his own fake death to get what he wants," Eleanor said, each word like a knife. "All of that. More. I'm everything bad you think and worse." Dylan breathed heavily, clearly tired. "But I'm begging you, Vic. Let me meet my son. Just once. I don't need time. I don't need him to forgive me or love me. I want to look at him. I want him to know I exist. That I existed." "Why?" Victoria took a step closer, finally. "Why does this matter to you now? You had 15 years. You chose not to be there." "Because I'm dying and I realize I've done nothing meaningful in my entire life. Nothing but pain and destruction. And my only legacy, the only good thing I've ever done, is that boy. And I don't even know him." Tears streamed down his emaciated face. "You can't understand this, because you've done meaningful things. The lighthouse, all those families you've helped, the incredible mother you are. You have a legacy. I have nothing. Just a son whose face I don't know." Victoria pulled out a chair and sat. Eleanor remained standing, arms crossed, still processing seeing her son in this state. "He's beautiful," Victoria finally said. "Thomas. He's 15 now. 5'7", thin, with brown hair like yours. Green eyes like mine. He's a piano prodigy. He's going on a European tour next year. He's still on the spectrum, always will be. But he's found his way to communicate through music. He has few friends, but the ones he has are loyal. He's kind, intelligent, funny in his own way. And he's happy, Dylan. Despite everything, Thomas is happy. Dylan closed his eyes, absorbing each word as if they were drops of water in the desert. And he has a father, Victoria continued, and there was a hardness in her voice now. Caleb has been his father for 8 years. He's the one Thomas calls Daddy. He's the one who taught him to ride a bicycle. He's the one who sits in at piano performances. He's the one who holds him during sensory crises. Caleb is his father. You're just the biological donor. I know. More tears. And I didn't come here trying to take that place. I couldn't even if I wanted to. I just want a moment, a chance to look at my son and tell him I'm sorry, that he deserved better, that the fault was mine, not his. He never thought it was his fault, Victoria said firmly, because we raised him knowing he's perfect exactly as he is. That autism isn't a flaw, it's just a difference, that he is loved unconditionally. Because you're a better mother than I deserved, and he has a better father than I could have been. Victoria looked at that broken man in the hospital bed, the man who had been her husband, her son's biological father, the source of so much pain, and she saw something she hadn't expected to see. Genuine surrender, not manipulation, not charm, just giving up. The acceptance of someone who knew he'd thrown everything away and couldn't get it back. I'll think about it, she said finally. But there are conditions, lots of conditions, and the final decision isn't mine or yours. It's Thomas's. If he doesn't want to meet you, you accept it. No drama, no guilt, no manipulation. I promise. Your promises aren't worth much, Dylan, but I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. One last time. As they left the hospital, Eleanor was silent. Only when they reached the car did she finally speak. He's really dying. Yes, and you're actually considering bringing Thomas to him. Maybe. I don't know yet. Victoria. Eleanor turned to her. You're the strongest woman I know. But this could break you. It could break Thomas. It could break Caleb. Are you sure it's worth the risk? Victoria looked at the hospital, the gray building against the gray October sky. No, I'm not sure of anything. But I know that if I don't give Thomas that choice, if he finds out when he's an adult that I kept this from him, he'll never forgive me. And more importantly, I'll never forgive myself. Then you need to talk to him. And to Caleb. You can't make this decision alone. I know. The drive back to Charleston was silent. Each of them lost in thought, processing the impossible. Victoria needed to do the unthinkable. But first, she needed to find the courage to have the most difficult conversation of her life. It was Sunday night when Victoria finally worked up the courage to speak to Caleb. Thomas was in his room, absorbed in composing a new piece of music, headphones blocking out the outside world. Caleb was in the kitchen, making coffee, his Sunday routine, the one day of the week where he worked from home without interruption. Victoria watched for a moment before speaking, committing the scene to memory. Her husband of 6 years, the man who had chosen her and Thomas when he didn't have to choose, completely unaware that their lives were about to be turned upside down. I need to talk to you about something, she said. The seriousness in her voice made Caleb pause immediately. He turned, seeing her expression. Dylan, he said. It wasn't a question. I went to see him. At Columbia. Eleanor went with me. Caleb's face hardened. You went to see him. I needed to know if you were telling the truth, if you were really sick or if it was another hoax. And he's dying. Really. Stage 4 lung cancer. Weeks tops. Caleb set his coffee cup down on the counter with more force than necessary. And let me guess, he still wants to see Thomas. Yes. The answer is no. Definite. Final. I won't let that man mess with our son. Caleb. No. He leaned closer to her. Vic, listen. I understand there's a part of you that feels, I don't know, obligation, guilt. But Dylan Torres abandoned Thomas when he was 4. He abandoned you when you needed him most. He pretended to die 8 years ago to manipulate money. And now he wants to come back and do what? Have a Hallmark moment on his deathbed? Absolutely not. It's not about what Dylan wants. It's about what Thomas might need in the future. Thomas has everything he needs. He has you. He has me. He has Eleanor. He has his community. He has... but he has no answer as to where he came from. Victoria took his hands. Thomas is entering adolescence. That's when identity issues become huge, especially for neurodivergent children. What if he starts asking questions about his biological father? What if he needs those answers, and I've denied him the only chance to get them? Then you tell the truth, that his biological father was a coward who chose not to be there. Or I say his biological father was dying. He wanted to meet him, and I decided I couldn't. Victoria released his hands, stepping away, and then Thomas spends the rest of his life wondering who that man was, idealizing him, blaming me for not letting him have answers. Or, Caleb said, his voice tense, he meets Dylan. Dylan disappoints him because of who he is, and Thomas is left with additional trauma. Or worse, they form some connection, and then Dylan dies, and Thomas has to process knowing and losing a biological father at the same time. All of those things are possible. I know. Victoria sat at the kitchen table, sudden exhaustion taking over. God, Caleb, I know. There's no right answer here. There are only bad choices and worse choices. Caleb sat beside her, taking her hand more gently this time. Why is this so important to you? Really, honestly. Why? Victoria thought carefully before answering. Because I've spent the last 10 years building Lighthouse on one principle, that every child deserves to be seen, heard, and have their needs met, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. And if I deny Thomas this option, this choice, I'm being hypocritical of everything I preach. But you're asking Thomas to make a choice he may not be equipped to make. He's 15, yes, but functionally. Functionally, he's more mature than you think. Victoria interrupted. Thomas may be autistic, but he's not a child. He understands complex concepts. He understands death. He understands choice. He understands consequences. Underestimating him, because he processes things differently, is exactly the kind of ableism we fight against. Caleb fell silent, clearly struggling internally. Finally, I'm scared. The raw honesty surprised Victoria. Of what? Of losing my son. His voice was hoarse now. I know that sounds selfish. I know. But Vic, Thomas is my son. He may not be my blood, but he's my son in every way that matters. What if Dylan comes into his life, even for weeks, and somehow, I don't know, creates confusion? Makes Thomas question who his real father is? I can't bear the thought of losing him. Tears burned Victoria's eyes. Oh, Caleb, you'll never lose Thomas. Never. You're his father. You, not Dylan. Nothing that happens will change that. You can't guarantee that. I can, because I know our son. Thomas loves you. You're his daddy. You have been for 8 years. Dylan would be, at best, an interesting stranger. At worst, a confirmed disappointment. So why risk it? Because, Victoria said slowly, I've learned that overprotecting is also a way to hurt. I've learned that sometimes love means giving you hard choices, not hiding them. And I've learned that trust, true trust, means believing Thomas can handle hard things because we raised him strong. Caleb ran his hands over his face, exhausted. You've already decided, haven't you? You've already decided you're going to talk to Thomas about this. I haven't decided anything yet, but I think I need to at least give him the option to decide. Not impose my decision, but trust his. What if he decides not to meet Dylan? Will you respect that? Absolutely. What if he decides to meet? Victoria took a deep breath. Then we'll have to navigate this together, as a family, with clear rules, firm boundaries, and full support for Thomas to process whatever comes. Caleb stared at his hands for a long moment. Then, there are conditions. If we're really going to do this, it has to be the right way. What conditions? First, we talk to Thomas's therapist beforehand. Dr. Kim needs to guide us on how to approach this in a way that won't be traumatic for him. I agree. Second, if Thomas decides to meet Dylan, it's on our terms. Not at the hospital. Not on Dylan's turf. Somewhere Thomas feels safe, and we have control. Makes sense. Third, I'm present. Always. I don't leave Dylan alone with Thomas. Not because I distrust Thomas, but because I don't trust Dylan not to try last-minute manipulation. I agree too. And fourth, Caleb looked directly into her eyes. If at any point this starts to negatively affect Thomas, anxiety, regression, anything, it stops. Immediately. I don't care if Dylan is 3 weeks old or 3 days old. Thomas's mental health comes first. Always, Victoria promised. Always. They sat in the kitchen in silence, hands clasped, facing the impossible together. From Thomas's room, the faint sound of a piano. He was testing melodies for his new composition. When are you going to talk to him? Caleb finally asked. After we talk to Dr. Kim. I need to know the right way to approach this. I can't risk saying it wrong and traumatizing our son. Our son, Caleb repeated softly. You said our son, because that's what he is. Ours. Mine, yours, even Eleanor's. Not Dylan's. Dylan may have contributed DNA, but family is what stays. And you stayed. You always do. Caleb pulled her into a hug, and Victoria allowed herself to crumble a little in his arms. The weight of the decision they faced was overwhelming. There was no manual for it. There was no guaranteed right answer. All they had was love, intention, and the hope that they were doing the best for the son they both adored. We'll survive this, Caleb whispered into her hair. Promise. I promise. Because we're family, and families weather storms together. From Thomas's room, the music stopped. Footsteps approached. His bedroom door opened, and he appeared in the kitchen, headphones around his neck. Mommy sad? He asked, reading their body language with the precision autistic children often possess. A little, my love, Victoria admitted, smiling through her tears. But it'll be okay. Thomas leaned in, did something rare for him. He hugged them both. It was a short, awkward hug, but it was his way of saying, I'm here. Family, Thomas said simply. Yes, baby. Family. And in that moment, embraced by her husband and son, Victoria knew that, whatever storm lay ahead, they would navigate it together. Because that's what true families did. The session with Dr. Kim was scheduled for Tuesday. A special session, just for Victoria and Caleb, without Thomas. The therapist had worked with Thomas since he was 7. She knew the boy deeply, understood his processes, his needs, his vulnerabilities. Dr. Kim's office was familiar and comfortable. Soft blue walls, natural lighting, a bookshelf filled with sensory toys and books on neurodiversity. A space designed to soothe, not overstimulate. So, Dr. Kim said after Victoria finished explaining the situation, Thomas's biological father, who abandoned him at 4 and then faked his own death, is now actually dying and wants to meet him. When you put it like that, it sounds even worse, Victoria admitted. That's because it's a terribly complex situation. Dr. Kim took off her glasses and wiped them thoughtfully. Let's start with the obvious. There's no standard protocol for this. Every child, every situation is unique. But I can offer some considerations based on what I know about Thomas specifically. Please, Caleb said, leaning forward. First, Thomas is at an interesting developmental point. 15 is when most teenagers start questioning identity, belonging, and origins. For autistic teenagers, these questions can be even more intense because there's already so much complexity surrounding who am I and how do I fit into the world? Are you saying he should meet Dylan? Victoria asked. I'm not saying he should or shouldn't. I'm saying it's possible that, at some point soon, Thomas would start asking questions about his biological father anyway. Autistic children tend to be very literal and concrete. Where did I come from? Isn't philosophical for them. It's physiological, genetic. And Thomas is smart enough to understand that there's a missing piece in his origin story. He never asked directly, Caleb said, because Caleb filled that space so completely. There was no vacuum to question, Dr. Kim explained. But as he gets older, as he sees other teenagers with 2 biological fathers, as he learns about genetics in school, the questions will come. And when they do, you wish you'd been honest with him from the beginning. Victoria felt a tightness in her chest. So you think we should tell him about Dylan being alive, about him dying, about wanting to meet him? I think they should be honest, but very, very careful about how they present it. Dr. Kim leaned forward. Thomas processes information differently. He needs clear facts, without metaphors or ambiguity. And he needs time to process big, emotional information. You can't just sit him down and say, "Your biological father is dying and wants to meet you." That would be emotional and cognitive overload. How should we approach it then? Victoria asked. Dr. Kim picked up a notepad. First, set the stage. Over the next few days, start casual conversations about biological family versus chosen family, about how some people have biological parents who can't care for them, and other people choose to be parents. Normalize the idea that family is who loves and cares for you, not just who made you. Thomas already understands this, doesn't he? Caleb said hopefully. Intellectually, yes. But when confronted with the concrete reality of the biological father, emotions can complicate that understanding. Dr. Kim continued writing. Second, when you're ready for the real conversation, do it in a setting where Thomas feels safest. Home, probably. Maybe in his room, with his comfort objects nearby. And what exactly do we say? Victoria pressed. Simple, straightforward truths. Something like, "Thomas, you know Caleb is your father, the person who raises and loves you. But you also have a biological father, the person who helped birth you. This man couldn't be a part of your life when you were little because he wasn't ready to be a father. Now he's very ill and will die soon. He asked if he could meet you once before he dies. We want to know what you think about that." That direct. Caleb looked uncomfortable. Autistic children often prefer brutal clarity to ambiguous kindness, Dr. Kim explained. Thomas won't be offended by directness. He'll be confused by euphemisms. What if he asks why his biological father abandoned him? Victoria asked. How do we answer that without making Dylan seem like a monster or making Thomas feel like it was his fault? Age-appropriate truth. He wasn't ready to be a father to a child who needed a lot of special care. That wasn't your fault. You were always perfect. He just wasn't strong enough to care for you the way you deserved. Dr. Kim paused, and then they immediately reinforce. But Caleb chose to be your father. He chose every day to love you and care for you. That makes him your real father. Caleb had tears in his eyes. Victoria squeezed his hand. What if Thomas decides he wants to meet Dylan? Victoria asked. How do we prepare him for what he's going to see? A man dying in a hospital bed isn't. It won't be easy. No. And you need to be honest about that too. Show him pictures, maybe. Explain how illnesses make people look different. Prepare him for the medical equipment, for the physical weakness. Thomas copes better when he knows exactly what to expect. Dr. Kim looked at them both seriously. But here's the most important part. Give him control. If he decides to meet Dylan and then, halfway through the visit, decides he wants to leave, you do. Immediately. Without question, without pressure to stay. Control is crucial for autistic children to process stressful situations. And how much time should he have to decide? Caleb asked. That depends on Dylan's medical urgency. If he truly only has weeks, Thomas needs at least a few days, maybe a week, to process and decide. You can't rush him, but you also can't leave him with no time limits because that creates endless anxiety. So we say, you have until the end of the week to think about it. Victoria tried. Something like that. And during this week, be available for questions. Lots of questions. Thomas will need to process verbally. He'll repeat the same questions in different ways. Be patient. Be consistent in your answers. Will he hate us? Caleb asked suddenly. If he decides not to meet Dylan and then Dylan dies, will he blame us? Possibly. At some point in the future, there may be regret, or relief, or indifference. There's no way to predict. Dr. Kim softened her voice. But here's the truth. You can't shield him from every difficult feeling. You can only be present while he processes them. And honestly, Thomas is resilient. You raised him to be resilient. Trust that. What about us? Victoria asked. How do we navigate our own feelings about this? Because I hate Dylan for what he did. I hate that he's asking for this. And I hate myself for even considering giving it to him. And I'm afraid of losing my son, Caleb added. that Dylan will somehow create confusion or doubt about who Thomas's real father is. Those are valid fears, valid emotions. Dr. Kim looked at them both compassionately. My suggestion? You both need support too. Couples therapy, perhaps, to process this together. And you need to be honest with each other about your fears. Because if you dwell on it internally, it will create distance between you, and Thomas will feel it. Victoria and Caleb exchanged glances. She could see the fear in his eyes, but also the determination. They had navigated worse storms. Not together, perhaps, but they had survived. One last question, Victoria said. If Thomas meets Dylan and forms some kind of connection, and then Dylan dies, how do we help him process this grief? The same way you would help him process any grief, with honesty, structure, and allowing him to express it in his own ways. Thomas probably won't cry the way we expect. He may shut down more, or he may not show obvious emotion, but that doesn't mean he's not processing. Dr. Kim paused. And frankly, music will be his processing tool. It always has been. If Dylan dies and Thomas is grieving, you'll hear it in his music before you see it on his face. That was true. Thomas processed everything through the piano. Joy was fast, complex melodies. Frustration was repeated dissonant chords. Sadness was slow, minor pieces. Thank you, Victoria said, feeling slightly more equipped, if not less scared. That helped. A lot. You are amazing parents, Dr. Kim said sincerely. Thomas is lucky to have you. And whatever decision he makes, you will support him through it. I have faith in that. When they left the office, the October sun was beginning to set over Charleston, painting the sky orange and pink. Victoria and Caleb walked to the car in silence, each processing the conversation. So, Caleb finally said, should we do this? Should we talk to Thomas? I think we have to talk. Not giving him the choice would be taking the choice for him, and that's not fair. No, it's not. Caleb opened the car door for her, then walked around to the driver's side. Before getting in, he looked at her over the roof of the car. Vic, yes, I love you, and I trust you. I trust us. We'll make this work, whatever Thomas decides. I love you too, and yes, we will. They drove home in comfortable silence, hands clasped together on the center console. When they arrived, Thomas was in the living room with Eleanor, the two of them working on a 1,000-piece puzzle, an activity Thomas loved for its predictability and pattern. Hi, you too, Eleanor said, looking up. She could read Victoria so well now. How was it? Enlightening, Victoria said. Shall we talk later? Eleanor understood. Sure. Thomas, honey, shall we finish this puzzle tomorrow? Grandma needs to go home. Okay, Grandma, Thomas said, not even looking up from the pieces. Tomorrow. After Eleanor left, Victoria and Caleb sat with Thomas in the living room. He had finished the section of the puzzle he was working on and was now looking at them curiously. Thomas, Victoria began, her heart pounding. Daddy and I need to talk to you about something important. It might be confusing or difficult, but we're going to be honest with you because you deserve to know the truth. Okay, Thomas put the puzzle pieces aside, giving them his full attention, something he only did when he knew it was truly important. Okay, Mommy, I'll listen. Victoria took a deep breath, exchanged one last look with Caleb, and began the conversation that would change everything. Thomas, you know that Daddy Caleb loves you very much and is your real father, right? Yes, Daddy is Daddy. Exactly. Daddy is Daddy because he raises you, loves you, cares for you every day. Victoria paused. But you also have a biological father, the person who helped you be born. Do you remember us talking about this when you were younger? Thomas frowned, processing. Dylan, the man who left. Victoria was surprised by the clarity of the memory. Yes, Dylan. He left when you were little because you weren't ready to be a father. Because I'm autistic, Thomas said matter-of-factly without emotion. Not because you're autistic is a problem. Caleb interjected quickly. You're perfect being autistic. He left because he wasn't strong enough to be the father you needed. It was his fault, not yours. Okay, Thomas accepted this with typical literalness. Dylan left because he's weak, not because I'm wrong. Exactly, Victoria confirmed. And Daddy Caleb stayed because he's strong and he loves you. Daddy is strong, Thomas agreed, looking at Caleb with something close to adoration. Caleb had to blink back tears. Thomas, Victoria continued, Dylan is very sick right now. He's going to die soon. And he asked if he could meet you once before he dies. We wanted to know what you think about that. Thomas was very quiet. His gaze became distant, something he did when he was processing complex information internally. Victoria and Caleb waited, knowing that rushing him would be counterproductive. Finally, Thomas spoke. Why does he want to meet me now? He said he regrets leaving. He wants to see you and tell you he's sorry before he dies. But he's still going to die. Yes, he's very sick. There's no cure. So he's going to meet me and then die. Thomas was processing logic, not emotion. Yes, it would just be a few visits, maybe, and then he would die. Thomas thought more. Would that be sad? It might be, or it might not be. It depends on how you feel about it. I don't know how I feel, Thomas admitted. I need to think. You have time to think, Caleb said gently. You can think for a few days, ask questions, and then tell us your decision. And whatever your decision is, we will support it. If I decide not to meet him, will you be angry? No, Victoria said firmly. Never. It's your choice. And if I decide to meet him, will Daddy Caleb be sad? Caleb swallowed. Maybe a little, but not angry with you. Never angry with you. And I will always be your daddy, no matter what. Dylan can't change that. Okay. Thomas picked up a puzzle piece, turning it over in his hands. A stem he made when he was thinking. Can I go to my room and think now? Of course, my love, Victoria said. Thomas stood, paused in the doorway, and turned. Thank you for telling the truth. I don't like it when adults lie to protect me. I prefer hard truths to easy lies. We'll always be honest with you, Caleb promised. Thomas nodded and went to his room. Moments later, they heard the sound of the piano. Minor chords, slow, thoughtful. Thomas was processing. Victoria collapsed onto the couch. Did we do the right thing? I don't know, but we did the honest thing. And for Thomas, that's the same thing. Caleb sat beside her. Now we wait. And we pray that whatever his choice, we can protect his heart through it. We always have. We always will. From Thomas's room, the music continued, a melody they had never heard before, something new born from the complexity of emotions he was processing. And in Colombia, 2 hours away, Dylan Torres lay in a hospital bed, unaware that the son he'd abandoned was, at that very moment, deciding whether it was worth getting to know the man who raised him biologically, but never emotionally. Their fate was, for the first time in 15 years, in the hands of an autistic teenager with a gift for music and a surprising capacity for truth. 3 days. Thomas took 3 days to process and decide. It was 3 days of questions, so many that Victoria lost count. Some were logistical. If I were to meet Dylan, where would it be? How long would I need to stay? Can he touch me? Or do I need to ask permission first? Others were deeper. If Dylan made me, but didn't create me, how much of him is part of me? Autistic brains are different. Did Dylan give me the autistic brain, or did you? If I don't meet him, will I regret it when I'm an adult? Victoria and Caleb answered each question patiently and honestly. Dr. Kim was right. Thomas needed to process verbally, and each question, no matter how repetitive it seemed, was him working through different layers of complexity. Eleanor came to dinner the second night. Thomas asked the question she'd been dreading. Grandma, you're Dylan's mother. Will you be upset if I don't want to meet him before he dies? Eleanor paused, fork poised, choosing her words carefully. I'll be sad that my son is dying, but I won't be sad for you, no matter what you decide. Your choices about what's best for you are more important than my feelings about my son. That makes sense, Thomas said, returning to his food. Thanks for being honest, Grandma. On the third night, Thomas asked to see old photos of Dylan. Victoria hesitated. She had digitally deleted most of his photos, part of exorcising the past. But Eleanor had albums. She brought them. Dylan as a child, smiling with no missing teeth. Dylan at his high school graduation. Dylan and Victoria on their wedding day, young and full of hope. Dylan holding baby Thomas in the hospital, looking at his newborn son with something that looked like love. Thomas studied each photo intently. He looks happy here. He pointed to the hospital photo. What changed? Fear, Victoria said honestly. When you were diagnosed with autism, he was afraid he wasn't good enough as a father. And instead of working through that fear, he ran from it. That's cowardly, Thomas said matter-of-factly. Yes, it was cowardly. But he also looks kind in these pictures, before he got scared. Thomas touched the hospital photo. I have his nose. It was true. Thomas had Dylan's nose, the shape of his eyes, the wavy hair. Yes, he does. I want to meet him, Thomas decided suddenly. Victoria felt her heart sink. Are you sure? You don't have to decide now. I processed. I asked questions. I thought logically. Thomas looked at her with those green eyes that were hers. I want to meet the person who helped me be born. Not because I need another father, Daddy Caleb is my father, but because I'm a scientist. I like to understand things completely, and I can't fully understand where I came from without knowing him. Okay, Victoria said, though the word felt heavy. Okay, we'll fix this. But there are rules, Thomas continued. It was so typical of him. He needed structure, clear boundaries. What rules? First, Daddy Caleb goes with me. I need him there. Caleb, who had been listening from the kitchen, had to wipe his eyes quickly. Second, if I get overwhelmed and want to leave, we will. Immediately. Absolutely, Victoria promised. Third, after I meet Dylan, I don't want to talk about him for a while. I'll need to process it privately. We respect that. And fourth, Thomas paused. If Dylan is horrible or makes you or Daddy feel bad, I want to know. Don't shield me from the truth, because you think I'll get hurt. I'd rather know. We'll always be honest, Caleb said, joining them in the living room. Thomas looked between his parents, the birth mother who never gave up, the chosen father who loved when he didn't need to, and saw safety. No matter what Dylan was, no matter what he said, these were his people. When are we going? Thomas asked. Let me call the hospital tomorrow, Victoria said. Check on Dylan, make arrangements. Not at the hospital, Thomas said firmly. Hospitals are very sensory stimulating. Lots of smells, lots of sounds. Where then? Thomas thought. Grandma has her own place. Could Dylan come there? If he can travel. Victoria looked at Eleanor, who had been quiet throughout the conversation. He can't travel, Eleanor said softly. He's too weak, too sick. He can barely sit still for long periods. Then it can't be at home, Thomas concluded. It needs to be at the hospital. We could request a private room, Caleb suggested. No other patients, less noise, and we could bring you noise-canceling headphones. And I can leave whenever I want. Any second I want. Thomas thought further. Okay, it could be at the hospital, but only for 30 minutes. No more. My sensory threshold is 30 minutes in environments like this. 30 minutes, Victoria agreed. I'll coordinate with the hospital. That night, after Thomas went to bed, Victoria called Eleanor out onto the back deck. The October night was cool, stars shining brightly over Charleston. He decided to meet Dylan, Victoria said. I know. I was there. How do you feel about that? Eleanor was quiet for a long moment. Torn. Part of me is relieved that my son will have the chance to meet his grandson before he dies. Part of me is furious that Dylan put you all in this position. And part of me is terrified that he'll hurt Thomas somehow. I'm terrified too. But you're letting Thomas decide anyway. That's brave. Or insane. I haven't decided which yet. Victoria laughed bitterly. Maybe both. Victoria! Eleanor turned to her. I need you to know something. If Dylan does or says anything that hurts Thomas, anything, I will get him out of that room myself. I don't care that he's my son. I don't care that he's dying. Thomas comes first. I know. And thank you. And another thing. Eleanor hesitated. Dylan doesn't know that Thomas is special. He knows about the autism, obviously. It was part of why he left. But he doesn't know how incredible Thomas has become. He doesn't know about the piano, about the achievements, about how brilliant he is in his own way. Dylan still imagines himself as a broken child. And when he sees the extraordinary boy that Thomas is, he'll realize what he lost. Yes, and honestly, part of me wants it to hurt. I want him to see exactly what he threw away when he chose to be a coward. Victoria understood that feeling. She had her own version of it, wanting Dylan to see the strong woman she'd become, the thriving business she'd built, the beautiful family she'd raised without him. When do we do that? Eleanor asked. I'll call the hospital tomorrow. Coordinate for the weekend, maybe Saturday. Give Dylan time to prepare. Give Thomas time to calm down before returning to school on Monday. And then we navigate whatever comes, like we always have. Eleanor hugged Victoria, something they did easily now, though it had taken years to reach this point of comfort. You're the daughter I always wanted. You know that, don't you? And you're the mother I chose. Biologically, I have one, but emotionally, you fill that space better than she ever did. It was true. Victoria's biological mother had disapproved of her marriage to Dylan, disapproved even more of her pregnancy, and completely distanced herself when Thomas was diagnosed. I can't handle a child like that, she had said. Victoria hadn't spoken to her in 9 years, and she didn't miss it. Family, she had learned, was a choice. It was who showed up. It was who stayed. The call to the hospital on Thursday morning was surreal. Providence Hospital, how can I help? I need to speak to Dr. Chun about patient Dylan Torres. They were transferred, put on hold, transferred again. Finally, Dr. Chun, Dylan's oncologist, answered. Mrs. Santos, your ex-husband will be relieved to know you called. He was worried you wouldn't call back. This call isn't for him. It's to discuss logistics. My son has decided he wants to meet his biological father. Once, under specific conditions. I see. What conditions? Victoria outlined everything. Private room. 30 minutes maximum. Caleb present. Thomas's ability to leave at any time. Totally reasonable. Dr. Chin agreed. I can arrange a family consultation room. More comfortable than a patient room. Less medical equipment, more privacy. When would you like to come? Saturday morning. 9 o'clock. Thomas's brain works best in the morning, before sensory fatigue sets in. Saturday at 9. I'll inform Mr. Torres and have everything prepared. He paused. Mrs. Santos, if I may, you're doing something difficult, but possibly important. Whatever the outcome, your son will have answers. That's worth something. I hope you're right, Doctor. When he hung up, Caleb was at the office door. So it's official. Saturday, 9 a.m. 2 days, Caleb said, more to himself than to her. 2 days until my son meets the man who raised him. The man who raised him, Victoria corrected gently. You raised him. Never forget the difference. I'm trying not to forget, but Vic, I'm terrified. What if Dylan says something that makes Thomas question our relationship? What if he somehow creates confusion or doubt about who the real father is? Victoria walked over to him, cupping his face in her hands. Caleb Richardson, you've been Thomas's father for 8 years. 8 years of breakfast, school lunches, homework nights. 8 years of sensory meltdowns at 3 in the morning. 8 years of learning about autism, adapting his communication, celebrating small victories that no one else would see as victories. Dylan will have 30 minutes. 30 minutes against 8 years. There's no competition. Logic tells you you're right, but fear isn't logical. I know. Believe me, I know. She kissed his forehead. But we'll do this together. And we'll protect our son. And after Saturday, Dylan will be a memory, not a threat. Promise. I promise. Friday passed in a haze of preparation. Victoria worked with Thomas to prepare him for what to see, showing him pictures of people in hospital beds, explaining oxygen tubes and IVs, describing how illnesses make people look different. He's going to look very different from those old photos, she warned. Much thinner, weaker. Because of the cancer, Thomas said matter-of-factly. Yes, the cancer is eating away at his body from the inside. That looks painful. Yes, very painful. Thomas absorbed this. So he's dying in pain. They're giving him medicine to help. But yes, he's uncomfortable. That's sad. Yes, it's sad when anyone dies. Even people who were cowards. The question was so characteristically Thomas. No malice, just logical processing of moral information. Even then, Victoria confirmed, we can sympathize with someone suffering while still recognizing that they made bad choices. That makes sense. People are complex, not just good or bad. Exactly. Friday night, Victoria couldn't sleep. She lay next to Caleb, staring at the ceiling, her mind whirling with 1,000 scenarios of how Saturday might go. I'm not sleeping either, Caleb murmured in the dark. How do you know? You're breathing. It's different when you're awake, overthinking. 8 years together, and you can even read my breath. 8 years together, and I know every part of you. He turned to face her in the darkness. Talk to me. What's keeping you awake? What if we're making a huge mistake? What if Thomas comes out of this traumatized? Then we help him heal, like we always do. What if Dylan says something terrible, something we can't undo? Then we cut him off, protect Thomas, and deal with the consequences. What if? Vic, Caleb interrupted gently. We can play what if all night, but the truth is, we don't know what will happen tomorrow. All we can do is be present, be aware, and trust that we raised Thomas strong enough to handle it. He is strong, Victoria agreed. Stronger than I was at his age. Because you taught him to be strong. You taught him that being on the spectrum isn't weakness. That having emotions isn't shameful. That asking for help isn't a failure. You taught him everything he needs to navigate tomorrow. I hope you're right. I am. I always am, Caleb said, and she could hear the smile in his voice. She lightly hit his arm. Arrogant. Confident. There's a difference. They lay in the dark, hands intertwined, facing the unknown together as they always did. Caleb. Yes. No matter what happens tomorrow, you know I chose you, right? I choose you every day. Not Dylan. Never again, Dylan. You. Caleb pulled her closer, kissing her hair. I know. And I choose you both. Always. From Thomas's room, the faint sound of a piano began. He couldn't sleep either, processing through the music, as he always did. The melody was complex, minor chords mixed with major resolutions, dissonance resolving into harmony. It was Thomas's mind working through the conflict of emotions, finding patterns in the chaos. Our son is incredible, Victoria whispered. Yes, he is. And tomorrow, Dylan will see exactly what he lost. Do you think he'll regret it? Absolutely. How could he not? But his regret doesn't change anything. It doesn't erase the abandonment. It doesn't recover 15 lost years. It's just regret, and he will have to die with it. There was a harshness in Caleb's words that Victoria rarely heard. He was usually the gentler of the two. But when it came to protecting Thomas, there was steel in him. I love you, she said simply. I love you too. Now try to sleep. Tomorrow will be long. Eventually, exhaustion overcame anxiety, and they both slept. Not deeply, but enough. Saturday dawned bright and cold. October in South Carolina could be unpredictable, but that day was perfect. Blue sky, crisp air, soft sunshine. Thomas woke at 6, as always. Routine was key, so Victoria kept everything exactly the same. Same breakfast, waffles with peanut butter, no jelly, cut into exactly 4 squares. Same bowl, the blue one, never the green one. Same place at the table. How are you feeling, my love? She asked as he ate. Nervous, Thomas answered honestly. My stomach feels weird. Anxiety can do that. It's normal. I don't like it. I know. Do you want to do some breathing exercises? They did the exercises Dr. Kim had taught them. Deep breaths, counting to 4, holding them, releasing them slowly. It helped a little. By 8, They were in the car. Eleanor had offered to go, but Victoria kindly declined. It needs to be just the three of us this first time. Fewer people, less stimulation for Thomas. The drive to Columbia was familiar now. Victoria had traveled this road so many times in recent years, establishing the new lighthouse centers. But today felt different, heavier. Thomas was in the back seat, noise-canceling headphones already in place, fingers drumming a complex rhythm on his thighs. A stim he did when he was processing. "You can change your mind," Caleb said, glancing in the rearview mirror. "Until we get into that room, you can change your mind." "I know, Dad, but I've already decided. I want to do this." "Why?" Caleb asked. It was a genuine question, not a judgment. Thomas thought carefully. "Because if I don't, I'll always wonder. And I don't like unanswered questions. They stay in my head, spinning. I prefer to know, even if knowing is hard." "That's very mature of you." Dr. Kim says autistic children are often more emotionally mature than people think. We process differently, but no less. Dr. Kim is right. They arrived at Providence Hospital at 8:45, 15 minutes early, enough time for Thomas to calm down from the excitement of the trip. They sat in the car for 10 minutes, Thomas doing more breathing exercises, Victoria and Caleb holding hands in the front seat, everyone bracing for what was to come. "Okay," Thomas said finally. "I'm ready." The hospital was smaller than MUSC, less imposing. Still, as soon as the automatic doors opened, Thomas flinched. The smell, that universal smell of hospital, disinfectant, and illness, hit him. "Headphones," Victoria offered. "Not yet. I need to be able to hear." They went to the reception desk. The woman there looked up, smiled professionally. "Torres family? Dr. Chun is expecting you. Consulting room B, second floor." The elevator was worse than the hallways, small space, fluorescent lights, poor ventilation. Thomas began to sway slightly, a sign he was approaching overload. "Almost there," Caleb said softly. "Just one more minute." The elevator dinged, doors opened. The second floor was quieter than the first, less traffic. Consulting room B was at the end of the hallway. Dr. Chun was waiting outside. He was younger than Victoria expected, maybe 40, black hair, glasses, a kind expression. "Santos Richardson family?" "Yes," Victoria confirmed. She had legally changed her name after marriage to Santos Richardson, and Thomas had done the same. He was Thomas Santos Richardson now, not Torres. Dylan had missed even that. "Mr. Torres is inside. Let me review what to expect." He crouched down to Thomas's level. "You must be Thomas. Your father is very weak. He's hooked up to oxygen and in 4 for fluids. It may sound scary, but he's not in any pain right now. We have him on a good dose of pain medication. He can talk, but his voice is weak, so you might need to get close to hear. Is that okay?" "How close?" Thomas asked. "Maybe 3 feet. You don't have to touch if you don't want to." "I probably won't want to. I don't like touching strangers." "Totally understandable." Dr. Chen looked at Victoria and Caleb. "Will you be in the room the whole time, too?" "Yes," Caleb said firmly. "We won't leave." "Good. Mr. Torres understands this is the only visit, correct?" "He understands," Victoria confirmed. 30 minutes, maximum. I'll give you privacy, but I'll be right outside if you need anything." "Ready?" Thomas took a deep breath. "Ready." Dr. Chen opened the door. The room was exactly as promised. More like a living room than a hospital room. Comfortable sofas, soft lighting, a window overlooking a small garden, and in a hospital reclining chair, hooked up to machines, but in a less clinical setting, was Dylan Torres. Victoria had seen him 3 weeks ago, but he had deteriorated even further. The weight loss was shocking. He couldn't weigh more than 100 pounds now. Skin stretched taut over bones. His hair had completely fallen out. Sunken eyes, gray skin. But when he saw Thomas, those eyes filled with life and tears. "Thomas," he whispered, his voice hoarse but clear enough to hear. Thomas stood frozen in the doorway, processing. His eyes took in every detail. The sick man, the machines, the space. Making the internal calculations he always made when confronted with new situations. Hi, Thomas said finally. You're Dylan. Yes. And you're, my God, you're beautiful. Thomas frowned slightly. I know. Mom says that. But beautiful isn't a useful descriptor. It's subjective. Despite everything, Dylan laughed. A weak but genuine sound. You're right. Let me be more specific. You're tall for 15. You have my nose and hair. You have your mother's eyes. You look healthy and well-groomed. That's better. Thomas agreed. More factual. Victoria and Caleb stayed near the door, letting Thomas navigate at his own pace. He took a few steps into the room, stopping about 6 feet from Dylan. You're dying, Thomas said. It wasn't a question. Yes, lung cancer. A few weeks, maybe less. Is this from smoking? Dylan blinked, clearly not expecting this line of questioning. Yes, I smoked for 20 years. That was dumb. Smoking causes cancer. Everyone knows that. Thomas, Victoria began, but Dylan held up a shaking hand. No, he's right. It was dumb. I've made a lot of dumb choices in my life. Dylan looked directly at Thomas, including the dumbest one of all, walking out of your life. Thomas processed this. Why did you leave? I was scared. Of what? Of you. Of being your father. Of not being good enough. So you ran away because you're a coward, Thomas said matter-of-factly. Mom explained. You weren't strong enough to be my father. Dylan closed his eyes, pain clear on his face. Yes, exactly. But Daddy Caleb was strong enough. Thomas continued. He stayed. He loves me. He's my real father. I know. And he's a better man than I ever was. Dylan opened his eyes, looking at Caleb. Thank you for loving my son when I couldn't. Caleb just nodded, jaw clenched, clearly not trusting himself to speak. Thomas took another step closer. Dr. Chen said you're not in pain. Is that true? Right now, yes. The medicine helps. Good. I don't like it when people are in pain, even people who were cowards. You're kind, Dylan said softly. Kinder than I deserve. It's not kindness. It's logic. Pain is bad. I don't want anyone to feel pain. Thomas paused then. Can I ask questions? Anything. Do you have other children? No. Just you. Good. It means my genetics are unique. I don't share them with half-siblings. Thomas was processing purely factually. Do you have a history of genetic diseases? I need to know for my medical records. Dylan seemed surprised by the practicality. Not that I know of. My father, your grandfather, died of a heart attack at 65. My mother has arthritis, but nothing serious. Okay, I'll document that. Thomas continued. Are you good at math? It was reasonable. Why? I'm pretty good at math. Trying to figure out where it came from. Mom's not great at math, so I thought maybe it was from you. Maybe it is, Dylan said, something like pride in his voice. What else are you good at? Music. Piano specifically. I'm considered a prodigy. Really? Dylan brightened a bit. I played guitar when I was younger. I wasn't talented, but I enjoyed it. So maybe musical aptitude is genetic too. Thomas seemed pleased to be finding logical connections. That's useful to know. Victoria watched, fascinated. Thomas was treating this like a research interview, not an emotional father-son encounter. It was very characteristically him, processing through facts before dealing with feelings. Are you happy? Dylan asked suddenly. Thomas thought. Yes, most of the time. I have hard days because I'm autistic and the world doesn't always make sense. But I have a family that loves me, music that makes me feel good, routine that gives me security. So yes, I'm happy. Good. That's good. Tears streamed down Dylan's face. You deserve to be happy. I know. Everyone deserves to be happy. Thomas tilted his head, studying Dylan. Are you happy? No. I haven't been happy for a long time. Because of bad choices. Yes. Bad choices lead to bad consequences. And now I'm dying alone because I pushed away all the people who could have loved me. That's sad, Thomas said, but logical. Actions have consequences. Yes, they do. Dylan paused then. Thomas, Can I say something? Okay. I'm sorry. For leaving. For not being your father. For wasting 15 years of your life. You deserved better. You deserved a father who stayed. Who fought. Who loved you enough to overcome his fear. I'm sorry that father wasn't me. Thomas processed this silently. Then, thank you for apologizing. But your apology doesn't change the past. It only acknowledges that the past was bad. You're right. Absolutely right. And I need you to know something. Thomas continued, his voice firm. You're not my father. Biologically, yes. Genetically, you contributed 50% of my DNA. But a father is the one who raises you. The one who loves you. The one who stays during crises at 3 in the morning and celebrates small victories no one else sees. That's Daddy Caleb, not you. Caleb had to turn his face away, shoulders shaking with suppressed emotion. I know, Dylan said, his voice breaking. And I'm grateful you had him, that you have him. Good. Thomas looked around the room, then back at Dylan. I answered your questions. You saw me. Now you can die knowing I exist and that I'm okay. It was so brutally honest, so characteristically Thomas. No cruelty, just fact. Yes, I can. Dylan smiled through his tears. Thank you for coming, for giving me this chance. You're welcome. It was logically the right thing to do. Thomas turned to Victoria. I'm ready to go now. You've processed enough. Okay, my love. Victoria looked at Dylan one last time. There was no love there, no anger, just closure. Goodbye, Dylan. Goodbye, Vic. And thank you for raising our son so well, for being the incredible mother I knew you would be. She waved at a loss for words. Caleb said nothing to Dylan. He simply placed a protective hand on Thomas's shoulder, guiding him toward the door. At the door, Thomas paused, looked back. Dylan. Yes. I won't miss you because I never knew you well enough to. But I hope you won't suffer when you die. Everyone deserves a peaceful death. Thank you, Thomas. That means more than you know. Thomas waved and left. Dr. Chun was waiting outside. How was it? It was exactly what it needed to be, Victoria said. Thank you for making this easier. In the elevator going down, Thomas remained quiet. When they reached the parking lot, the car, he finally spoke. He was smaller than I thought he would be. In what way? Caleb asked. Physically, obviously, but also as a person. I built an image in my head of the biological father who made me. I thought he would be bigger, more impressive, but he was just a sick, sad man who made bad choices. Yes, Victoria agreed. That's exactly what he was. I'm glad I was, Thomas continued. Now I know. I don't have to wonder anymore. He's real, not fantasy. And reality is better than fantasy because I can process reality. How do you feel? Caleb asked. Thomas thought for a long moment. Grateful. Grateful. That he left. Because if he had stayed, you wouldn't be my father. And I prefer you. Caleb had to stop walking, the emotion too much. He pulled Thomas into a hug. Something Thomas normally resisted, but this time he allowed it. I love you, Thomas. More than words can express. I love you too, Daddy. You're the right father for me. Victoria watched father and son embrace in the hospital parking lot and knew. She knew they had done the right thing. It hadn't been easy. It had been terrifying, but it had been necessary. Thomas had his answers. He had seen the man who biologically raised him, processed the reality, and confirmed what he already knew. Family is choice. Love is action. And Dylan had seen the extraordinary son he had abandoned. He had to live his last days knowing exactly what he had lost. It wasn't revenge. It was just consequence. And sometimes, consequence is the greatest justice of all. The week following the meeting was one of intense processing. Thomas didn't talk about Dylan for the first 2 days, as he'd requested, but his music changed. The compositions he created were more complex, layers upon layers of melody, as if he were working through multiple emotions simultaneously. On Wednesday night, over dinner, he finally spoke. I've had thoughts about Dylan, he announced, his fork poised in midair. Victoria and Caleb exchanged quick glances. Want to share? Victoria asked gently. Yes, I've processed enough now. Thomas placed his fork neatly next to his plate. He always did this when he was about to say something important. Dylan said he was afraid of me, but I think he was afraid of himself, afraid of not being good enough. And instead of working to be better, he ran away. That's a very insightful observation, Caleb said. It's not insightful. It's logical. People often project their own fears onto other people. Thomas paused. Dr. Kim taught me this, that when someone says you're too difficult, it often means I'm not strong enough. It's about them, not you. Exactly, Victoria confirmed. So Dylan leaving was never about me being autistic. It was about him being weak. Thomas looked between his parents. And you two staying wasn't because I'm easy. You stayed because you're strong. Because true love doesn't give up when it gets hard. Where did you learn that? Caleb asked, his voice thick with emotion. From you. Watching. You show me every day what true love is. Thomas resumed eating. That's why I'm glad Dylan left. He made room for Daddy Caleb. And Daddy Caleb is a better dad. Caleb had to leave the table for a moment, too emotional to speak. Did you hurt his feelings? Thomas asked worriedly, watching Caleb leave. No, my love. You made him very happy. Sometimes happy emotions also make people cry. That's confusing. But okay. Thomas thought more. Mommy. Yes. Thank you for letting me choose. About meeting Dylan. You could have decided for me. To protect me. But you trusted me to decide. That made me feel respected. Tears burned Victoria's eyes. I will always respect your choices, Thomas. You're autistic, but you're not an incapable child. You're intelligent, capable, and deserve autonomy. I know. You taught me that. That autism isn't less. It's just different. Exactly. Caleb returned, eyes red but smiling. Sorry, I just needed a moment. It's okay, Daddy. Emotions are normal. The rest of the week was a gradual return to normal. Thomas went back to school, back to his routines, back to simply being Thomas. The meeting with Dylan was filed away in her mind as processed. Information obtained, questions answered, ready to move on. But for Victoria, there was one final call she needed to make. On Friday, she called Providence Hospital. Dr. Chun, this is Victoria Santos, calling to check on Dylan Torres. Ah, Mrs. Santos. I was actually going to call you today. His voice was soft, professional. Mr. Torres passed away last night, peacefully in his sleep, painlessly. Victoria sat quietly, processing. Dead. Dylan was truly dead now. Thank you for letting me know. He left something for you. A letter. May I send it? Yes, please. The letter arrived 3 days later. Victoria stared at the envelope for an hour before finding the courage to open it. Inside, the handwriting was shaky, obviously written by weak hands, but the words were clear. Victoria, if you're reading this, I'm gone. Honestly, it's a relief. Living with regret is worse than dying of cancer. Meeting Thomas was the greatest gift and the greatest punishment. A gift because I got to see the extraordinary boy I helped raise. A punishment because I got to see exactly what I threw away when I chose to be a coward. He is everything I could have hoped for and more. Intelligent, direct, honest in a way few adults can be. And clearly loved. So obviously loved that even a dying stranger could see it. You did this. You and Caleb. You took a boy the world called broken and showed him he was never broken. Just different. And different is beautiful. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I want you to know that I acknowledge what I did. Every cowardly choice. Every lie. Every moment I put my comfort above my son's well-being. And I want you to know that in my final days, the only thing that gave me peace was knowing that Thomas is happy, that he has parents who stay, that he will have a life I could never have given him. Thank you for being strong when I was weak, for raising our son when I ran away, for being the mother he deserved when I failed to be the father he needed. And thank you for giving me those 30 minutes. It didn't change the past, but it did let me die knowing that my only legacy, my son, is in good hands. Be happy, Vic. You always deserved happiness. And now, finally, it seems you found it. Dylan. Victoria read the letter 3 times. tears streaming silently down her face. They weren't tears of loss, not of love. They were tears of closure, of a chapter finally, completely closed. She showed the letter to Caleb that night. "How do you feel?" he asked after reading it. Relieved. He acknowledged what he did. He didn't ask for forgiveness he didn't deserve. He just acknowledged it. Victoria folded the letter carefully. "And it's over now. Truly over. Will you show it to Thomas?" "When he's older, maybe, if he asks. But for now, no. He has the closure he needs. This is for me. And Eleanor. I'll call her tomorrow. She deserves to know her son died peacefully." The call to Eleanor was difficult. She cried. The cry of a mother who has lost a child, no matter how complicated that child was. "Can I come?" Eleanor asked. I need to be with you. With Thomas. With family. Of course. Always." Eleanor arrived that afternoon, eyes red but composed. Thomas hugged her, rare for him, but he understood grief in his own way. "Dylan died," he said matter-of-factly. "You must be sad because he was your son." "Yes, I am sad. Even though he made bad choices?" "Even so. A mother's love doesn't turn off just because you're disappointed. It's complicated." Thomas thought about it. "How do you feel about Mom and me? Did you love us even when Dylan was angry that we did this?" Eleanor looked at her grandson, then at Victoria. "You're my real family. Dylan was my son, and I've always loved him. But you're the ones who chose to keep me. The ones who gave me a second chance when I didn't deserve one. So yes, I love you. More than I can express." "Good. Because we love you too, Grandma. You're part of our family." That night, after Eleanor left and Thomas was in bed, Victoria and Caleb sat on the back deck, looking at the stars over Charleston. "It's weird," Victoria said. "Dylan being really dead now. Not pretend, but really dead. How do you feel about that?" "Empty? Not in a bad way, but like a space that was filled with anger and pain is now just empty, and I don't know what to put there." "How about nothing?" Caleb suggested. "How about letting that space just be? Not anger, not performative forgiveness, not anything. Just empty peace." "Empty peace," Victoria repeated. "I like that." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Caleb spoke. "There's something I want to discuss. About Lighthouse." "What?" "Your project. Unsupported mothers. You've been so focused on Dylan, on Thomas, that we haven't talked about it. But the proposal. Vic, it's brilliant. $10 million. 25 companies committed. You're about to change the lives of thousands of families." Victoria had almost forgotten the project she'd been developing for months, which was paused by Dylan's return, who was awaiting final approval. "Have the companies confirmed?" "I received emails today. All 25 confirmed. They're ready to sign. The official announcement would be next week." Next week? Victoria could barely process it. "That's huge. It's enormous. You're creating the largest direct support fund for families with autistic children in the entire Southeast, maybe in the country." Tears filled her eyes again, but these were different. They were tears of accomplishment, of purpose fulfilled, of knowing that the pain she'd endured was turning into real change for so many others. 10 years, she whispered. 10 years since that day in the pediatrician's office, when I thought the world had ended. And now you've built something that will last for generations," Caleb finished. "You turned the worst day of your life into the first day of something extraordinary." "We did. You, me, all the people who believed. But you were the heart. It was always you, Vic." From Thomas's room, a faint piano sound began. Not the complex composition of processing. It was something new. Something light. Joyful even. "He's happy," Victoria said. "Really happy. Because he has parents who love him, a grandmother who adores him, a community that supports him, and a future full of possibilities." Caleb turned to her. "You gave him this. When Dylan left, when everything fell apart, you could have given up. But you didn't. And now look." Victoria looked at the house they'd built, at the sound of their son's music, at the man who'd chosen to love them, at the city that had been the site of so much pain and so much growth. "You know what's crazy?" she said. "If someone had told me 10 years ago that Dylan leaving would be the best thing that could ever happen, I never would have believed it. But now I see. Sometimes you have to lose everything to build something real." "No need," Caleb corrected gently. "You chose to build. The loss was just the circumstance. The building was all you." "Us," she insisted. "The building was all us." Thomas's music shifted to something they recognized, the piece he was preparing for the European tour. It was technically and emotionally complex, demonstrating not just talent but rare artistic maturity. "He's going to conquer Europe," Caleb said with obvious paternal pride. "He's going to conquer the world," Victoria agreed. "And he's going to do it by being authentically himself. No masks, no pretending to be neurotypical. Just Thomas in all his neurodivergent glory. That's the greatest gift you've given him. Not just therapies or resources, but permission to be exactly who he is." Victoria leaned against Caleb, her head on his shoulder, listening to her son play. And for the first time in months, maybe years, she felt complete peace. Dylan was dead. It wasn't celebration, but it was closure. The lighthouse was thriving beyond her wildest dreams. Thomas was happy, healthy, flourishing, and she had a partner who stayed, who chose her and Thomas every day, who turned broken family into chosen family. "Caleb, yes, thank you." "Why?" "For seeing value in us when Dylan saw only burden. For loving Thomas as your own when you didn't need it. For giving me a second chance at love when I thought I'd never have one." "Vic, you don't understand yet, do you?" Caleb turned her to face him. "I'm the lucky one here. You're the strongest, most compassionate, most incredible woman I've ever known. And Thomas, that boy is extraordinary. Not despite the autism. With the autism, you two gave me purpose I hadn't had since Amanda died. You gave me family again. Would Amanda have liked us?" Victoria asked suddenly. "I would have loved you. I would have seen in Thomas what few people see. Not limitations, but infinite possibilities. And I would have seen in you a kindred spirit. Someone who fights not for herself, but for those she loves. I wish I could have known her. She knew you in a way. Every lesson she taught me about patience, about seeing beyond the obvious, about love not giving up. Those were the lessons that allowed me to love you the way you deserve." Thomas's music reached a crescendo, then softened into perfect resolution. Silence. Then, moments later, he began another piece. "He'll play all night," Victoria said with the smile of a mother who knows her son's patterns. "Probably. He's happy. Music is how he expresses joy. Should we go inside? It's getting cold." 5 more minutes. I like this moment. Just the two of us, listening to our son, knowing that tomorrow brings good things." "Good things," Victoria echoed. "After so many years of hard things, finally good things." They stood on the deck under the Charleston stars, listening to piano music drift through the night. Holding each other, peace finally achieved. Dylan Torres was dead and buried, but Victoria Santos Richardson was more alive than ever, and her story was just beginning its best part. Monday arrived with bright sunshine and promise. Victoria was in the Lighthouse main office at 7 in the morning, reviewing the final documents for the announcement of the Unsupported Mothers Project. Robert Harrison would arrive at 9 with representatives from all 25 companies for official signature. But first, there was something she needed to do. She dialed the intercom that connected all 15 Lighthouse centers across the 3 states. "Good morning, everyone." Her voice echoed through the systems. "This is Victoria. I need all staff and families currently in the centers to gather in their main offices in 10 minutes. I have an important announcement." 10 minutes later, 15 centers were filled with people waiting. Victoria could see them through the video conferencing system Caleb had installed. Hundreds of faces, tired but hopeful mothers, children in various stages of therapy, dedicated staff who had made the work happen. "Thank you for coming together," she began, emotion already tightening her throat. 10 years ago, I was sitting in a doctor's office hearing that my 4-year-old son had severe autism. My husband at the time had abandoned me. My business failed. I lost everything. Faces across the screen showed recognition. So many of them had similar stories. But from that loss, I discovered something. I discovered that I wasn't alone, that there were hundreds, thousands of mothers like me, fighting the same battles, feeling the same loneliness. And I realized that if I could create a place where no one had to fight alone, maybe I could turn my pain into purpose. Applause broke out in some of the centers. Lighthouse started as a small center, serving 5 families. Today, we serve over 3,000 children through 15 centers. We offer therapies, community support, educational resources. But there was always a missing piece. She paused for effect. Direct financial support. Because no matter how many free therapies we offer, these mothers are still struggling to pay rent, food, basic bills. They're still choosing between medicine for their children or gas to get to work. They're still sacrificing in ways no one should have to. Heads nodded across the screens. So I spent the last year developing something. Lighthouse's biggest project to date. And today, I'm thrilled to announce the Unsupported Mothers Project. She clicked a remote, and slides appeared on the screens behind her. 25 major companies, including Boeing, MUSC, Blackbaud, Volvo, and 20 others, have committed annual financial support. Together, they've created a $10 million fund. Audible gasps through the centers. This fund will provide direct grants to families. Not loans, not temporary assistance. Real grants, no down payment required. For medical emergencies, housing expenses, transportation, special needs. Anything that allows these families to not just survive, but thrive. People were crying now. Patricia, sitting in the original center, was sobbing openly. Each Lighthouse Center will have a dedicated family support coordinator. If you have an emergency, if your car breaks down, if your landlord threatens eviction, if your child needs equipment that insurance doesn't cover, you go to your coordinator. No endless paperwork, no months-long waits. Real immediate help. Furthermore, Victoria continued, we're establishing a mentoring program. Mothers who have been through the hardest parts of the journey will mentor mothers who are just starting out, because no one understands like another mother who has lived through it. More applause, more tears. And finally, we're launching an educational scholarship for mothers who want to go back to school, get training, develop careers, but can't afford childcare or tuition. We'll cover both. The rooms erupted in applause. Through the screens, Victoria saw mothers hugging each other, staff members crying, even some children reacting to the emotion around them. This, she said when the noise subsided, this isn't just about money. It's about dignity. It's about telling every mother here, you're not alone. Your struggle matters. Your sacrifice is seen. And you deserve support. Carmen raised her hand at one of the centers. When does this start? Today, Victoria said with a smile. Companies sign contracts in 2 hours. Family support coordinators start next week. Grant applications open tomorrow. How do we apply? Another mother asked. Your therapist or social worker can start the application, or you can come directly to the coordinator. There's no complicated process. You explain your need, they assess it, and in most cases, you're approved within 48 hours. What if we're not in crisis now, but we have an emergency later? Jennifer asked. The fund is permanent. It's not a one-year program. It's an ongoing commitment. It'll be there when you need it. This week, next year, 10 years from now. Rachel, who had 3 children with autism and had fought harder than most, stood up. Victoria, you saved our lives. Literally, I was about to give my children up for adoption because I couldn't anymore. But Lighthouse, you gave me hope. And now this. I have no words. You don't need words, Victoria said, tears falling. You just need to keep loving your children. Keep fighting. Keep being the warrior mother you've always been. We'll do the rest. After the video call ended, Victoria stood alone in the office for a moment, letting the magnitude of what had just been announced sink in. $10 million, thousands of families, lives transformed not just by therapy, but by basic financial stability. It was the dream he didn't know he had when he first opened the Lighthouse. But now, 10 years later, it was happening. Caleb walked into the office. I heard the announcement from my office. It was perfect. They deserve to know first. Before the press, before the politicians, before anyone else. The families deserve to be the first to know. And now we welcome the companies. We make it official. At 9 o'clock sharp, the center was filled with executives in suits, corporate sustainability managers, legal representatives. 25 companies, each sending at least 2 people. Robert Harrison, as the largest individual donor, spoke first. 10 years ago, my brother died in an institution. He was 32, severely autistic, and spent the last 10 years of his life alone because our family didn't have the resources or knowledge to care for him at home. His voice was thick. The lighthouse didn't exist then, but it does now. And this project ensures that no other family has to make the impossible choices mine did. One by one, representatives from each company signed the contracts. Boeing committed $1 million annually. MUSC $500,000. Smaller companies $1,000, $5,000, $10,000. Each signature a promise. Each promise a potentially saved life. When the last signature was collected, when contracts were officialized, when photographers finished documenting the historic moment, Victoria finally allowed herself to believe. They had done it. The Mothers Without Support project was real. The press conference was scheduled for the afternoon. All the major networks were present, WCBD, WCSC. Even some national ones like CNN and NBC had sent crews. Victoria stood in front of a podium packed with microphones, camera lights blinding, questions flying. Mrs. Santos Richardson, this is the largest direct support fund for autism in the region. What inspired this? Need, she replied simply. I saw mothers choosing between food and therapy. I saw families becoming homeless because they couldn't afford rent and medical care. I saw the system failing the most vulnerable people. And I decided that if the system wasn't going to change, we would create our own. Some critics say that giving direct cash without intensive supervision leads to abuse. How do you respond? By saying these critics have never experienced the reality of these families. Victoria said firmly, these mothers aren't looking for systems to abuse. They're looking for ways to survive. And treating them with distrust only adds shame on top of their struggle. We will treat them with dignity, assume good intentions, and trust that mothers know what their children need. You've become a national voice for autism advocacy. 10 years ago, you were a broke single mother. How do you explain this transformation? Victoria thought carefully. Pain can do 2 things. It can break you, or it can reshape you. I chose to let it reshape me. But I didn't do it alone. I had people who believed in me. Evelyn Porter, Margaret Chin, Caleb Richardson, Robert Harrison, so many others. Transformation is never solo. It's always community-based. There are rumors that the governor is considering expanding the Lighthouse model statewide with state funding. Can you comment? Talks are ongoing, Victoria confirmed. But any expansion would have to maintain the core principles: family-centered support, dignity over bureaucracy, community over institution. I won't compromise that for money or scale. Last question. What would you say to other mothers who are where you were 10 years ago? Victoria looked directly at the main camera. I would say, you are not alone. The diagnosis feels like the end, but it's just the beginning of a different journey. Your child isn't broken. The world just wasn't built with them in mind. But you can change that. One small action at a time, one courageous choice at a time. And when you feel weak, when you think you can't handle another day, remember, you are stronger than you know. You are a warrior mother. And we, the Lighthouse, this community, are here for you. Always. The room erupted in applause. Not just from the reporters, but from the Lighthouse staff who had gathered in the back, from the families who had come to watch, from the people who understood this wasn't just a press conference. It was a declaration, a promise, a quiet revolution saying, special needs families matter. Their struggles are seen. Their dignity will be protected. That night, at home with Thomas and Caleb, Victoria finally let the day sink in. You were incredible today, Caleb said, pouring them both wine. Thomas was in his room, happily playing his piano. I was terrified. It didn't seem like it. It seemed exactly what it is, a leader, a visionary, someone changing the world one family at a time. I just wanted to help. I didn't expect it to become this. What? A national movement? A systemic change? A legacy? Yes, all of it. Caleb pulled her onto the couch, hugging her. You know what Dylan lost. Not just Thomas. Not just you. He lost this. Watching you become this force of nature. Seeing what you built from absolutely nothing. That must hurt, wherever he is now. I don't think about Dylan anymore. Liar, Caleb said gently. Not much, maybe. But sometimes you have to wonder, what if he had stayed? How would it be different? Victoria considered. Honestly, if he had stayed, I never would have built Lighthouse. I would have been trapped in a lifeless marriage, working in a business I didn't love, living someone else's life. She looked at Caleb. Dylan leaving was the cruelest thing that ever happened to me, but it was also the thing that freed me to become who I truly am. So you're grateful? Not grateful, but at peace with it. Dylan was the catalyst, not the villain in my story. I would have been the villain if I'd let him break me. From Thomas's room, music stopped. Footsteps approached. He appeared in the living room, carrying his tablet. Mommy, you're on Twitter, he announced. What? Victoria grabbed his tablet. His press conference was trending. Hashtag Lighthouse Project, hashtag Warrior Mothers, hashtag Autism Support, all with thousands of tweets. She scrolled through the tweets. Mothers were sharing their own stories. People were donating. Companies were asking how they could join the project. A movement was being born in real time. That's a lot of people, Thomas observed. You're famous now. It's not about being famous, my love. It's about amplifying a message. What message? That families like ours matter. That children like you are valuable just as they are. That mothers shouldn't have to choose between caring for their children and surviving financially. Thomas processed this. So you're changing the world so that other children like me can have better lives. Yes, exactly. That's good. I like it when people make the world a better place. He paused, then, Mommy? Yes, I'm proud of you. I know I rarely say this because emotions are hard to express, but you should know, you're my mother, and I'm proud that you're my mother. Victoria felt tears burn. Thank you, Thomas. This means everything to me. Okay, I'll go back to playing now. He grabbed the tablet and walked back into the bedroom, as if he hadn't just given her the greatest gift he could give. That boy, Caleb said, laughing and crying at the same time. He knows exactly when to say exactly the right thing. He knows. In his own way, he always knows. Victoria's phone rang. Eleanor, I just saw the news. Her mother-in-law's voice was euphoric. Victoria, what you did today. Dylan should have been here to see this. To see the woman you've become. He saw a little. Before he died, he saw Thomas. He saw what I built. And he died knowing he threw away the best thing he ever had. Eleanor, no, let me just say this. My son was a fool, a coward, and I failed to raise him, somehow. But you took the broken pieces he left and created something magnificent. You're the daughter I always wanted, the mother I wished I could have been, and I'm so proud. Thank you, Eleanor. That means more than you know. See you Sunday for dinner? Sure. Thomas is counting the days. You know how he loves the predictability of Sunday dinners. When she hung up, Caleb was looking at her with that expression she knew so well, love, admiration, something deeper than words. What, she asked. I was just thinking about how lucky I was. To spill coffee on your laptop that day. To have you give me a chance. To build this life with you and Thomas. I'm the lucky one. Let's not argue about who's luckier. How about we accept that we're both incredibly blessed? Deal done. They kissed, sweet and deep. 10 years of history between them, decades more to go. From Thomas's room, the music started again. Not a piece they were familiar with, but something new. Something that sounded like celebration, like joy captured in melody. He's happy, Victoria said. Truly, deeply happy. Because he has a family who loves him. A mother who fought for him when the world told him to give up. and a future without limits. And a father who chose to love him when he didn't need to. I always did, Caleb corrected. Maybe I didn't know it before I met you, but from the moment I saw you struggling alone, Thomas struggling to communicate, I knew. I needed you as much as you needed me. Thomas's music reached a glorious crescendo, then softened into something more contemplative. He was improvising, creating in real time, his extraordinary brain doing what it did best, finding patterns, creating beauty, expressing himself in the only language that had ever made perfect sense to him. 10 years, Victoria said suddenly. Exactly 10 years ago tomorrow. Since what? Since the diagnosis. Since that day in the office, when I thought the world had ended. Exactly 10 years tomorrow. Caleb took her hand. How do you want to mark this? Celebration? Reflection? Both. Maybe. Maybe we'll take Thomas to the place where it all began. Dr. Martinez's office. Show her the incredible young man he's become. Is she still practicing? Yes. Retiring next year. But yes, it would be good for her to see. To know that that devastating diagnosis she gave 10 years ago led to all of this. Let's ask Thomas if he wants to go. They went to his room. Thomas paused playing the piano when they saw him enter. Tomorrow will be 10 years since your diagnosis, Victoria said. We'd like to visit the doctor who diagnosed you. Show her how well you're doing. Would you like that? Thomas thought carefully. Why should she care? Because doctors who diagnose autism often wonder what happens to these children. If they get well, if their families survive. It would be good for her to see a success story. Am I a success story? You're the success story, Caleb said. Not just surviving, but thriving. Being happy. Having a life full of music and love and possibilities. Okay, Thomas agreed. We can visit her. But not too early. My brain doesn't work well early. 10 in the morning? 10 works. Dr. Elena Martinez was in her office when she got the call. Dr. Martinez? This is Victoria Santos Richardson. I don't know if you remember me, but you diagnosed my son, Thomas, 10 years ago. Victoria. Of course I remember. You and Dylan, was that his name? Yes, but we're not together anymore. I'm married to Caleb now. And Thomas, well, we'd like to visit you tomorrow, if possible. Show you how he's doing. I love that. I always wonder about my autism patients. How are they doing? If their families can navigate the system. What time is it open? 10 a.m. Perfect. I can't wait to see you. The next morning, Victoria, Caleb, and Thomas walked into the same office, where everything had changed 10 years ago. The smell was the same. That mix of disinfectant and character stickers. The walls still had the same colorful animal murals. But everything else was different. Victoria was no longer the frightened, broken woman she'd been 10 years ago. Caleb wasn't an absent, disinterested husband. He was a committed, present partner. And Thomas. Thomas was 15 now. 5'7", thin but with the confident posture of someone who knew who he was. Wearing a band t-shirt, labelless of course. Comfortable jeans, and headphones around his neck. Dr. Martinez greeted them in the waiting room, and her eyes widened at the sight of Thomas. My God, she whispered, you've grown so much. Yes, Thomas said matter-of-factly. Humans typically grow during puberty. I'm 15 now. She laughed, delighted. Yes, you have. It's good to see you, Thomas. Do you mind if we chat for a bit? I'm just curious how you're doing. Can I ask you questions, too? Thomas asked. Of course. They went to the same office, where the original diagnosis had been given. Same table, same chairs, same educational toys on the shelves. But the atmosphere was completely different. So, Thomas, Dr. Martinez began. Your mom says you're doing well. Tell me about your life. Thomas wondered where to begin. I'm still autistic. That hasn't changed because autism isn't something you can cure. It's just how my brain works. You're absolutely right. But I've learned to navigate better. I have strategies for sensory overload. I have ways to communicate when words are difficult. And I have family who understand that when I need alone time, it's not rejection, it's just need. That's wonderful. And school. I'm in a regular school with support, honors in math and science. Fair in English. I don't like metaphors, they're ineffective. But I manage. Dr. Martinez was taking notes, clearly fascinated. And socially, do you have friends? 3 close friends, all also neurodivergent, which helps because we don't have to pretend to be different than we are. We have a shared interest in music and math. Music, she picked up on that. You play. Piano. Advanced level. I'm touring Europe next year. 14 concerts in 9 countries. Her eyebrows rose. A tour? Thomas, that's extraordinary. Not for me. It's just what I do. Like other people do sports or art. I make music. He's considered a prodigy, Victoria added proudly. He has a perfect musical memory. He can hear a piece once and reproduce it perfectly. And you compose too? Dr. Martinez asked. Yes, 23 original pieces so far. Most are emotional processing through mathematical patterns. Music makes sense to me when words don't. Dr. Martinez leaned back, clearly moved. Thomas, do you know what you are? You're exactly what I hope every child I diagnose becomes. Not cured of autism, but flourishing with autism. Living a full, meaningful, happy life. I am happy, Thomas confirmed. Not every day. No one is happy every day. But generally, yes, I am happy. Can I ask you a few questions about your original diagnosis? She asked. Professionally, I always try to learn. Okay, when you were diagnosed, you were nonverbal in many situations, had severe sensory seizures daily, and displayed intense repetitive behaviors. How do you navigate these things now? Thomas considered. I still get nonverbal when overwhelmed, but now I have a communication app on my phone for those moments. Sensory meltdowns still happen, but less often because I've learned to identify triggers and avoid or prepare for them. And repetitive behaviors. I still stimulant, but I've learned which ones are socially acceptable in which situations. Did you have to mask a lot? Hide your autism? Initially, yes. But Mom and Dad Caleb taught me that masking is exhausting and unnecessary. Now I only find environments where I can be authentically myself. And when I'm in environments that require some masking, I do it because I choose to, not because I'm ashamed. Daddy Caleb, Dr. Martinez noted. Not Dylan then. Dylan left when I was 4. Thomas said simply. He wasn't strong enough to be my father. Daddy Caleb chose to love me. That makes him my real father. She looked at Caleb, who had been quiet until now. You adopted Thomas? Legally, yes. But emotionally, he's been my son since the day I met him and Victoria 8 years ago. And Dylan, what happened to him? He died 3 weeks ago, Victoria said. Cancer. Thomas met him once before he died. What was that like for you, Thomas? Enlightening, Thomas replied. Answered questions I had about genetics and origins. Confirmed he was weak and Daddy Caleb is strong. And gave me closure I didn't know I needed. Dr. Martinez wiped her eyes discreetly. Victoria, when you left this office 10 years ago, you were devastated. I remember it so clearly. And now look at you. Look at your family. Look at what you've built. We built, Victoria corrected, looking at Caleb and Thomas. I didn't do this alone. But you were the catalyst. Most families I diagnose don't survive intact. 80% of marriages end. Many mothers end up alone, exhausted, barely surviving. But you didn't just survive. You thrived. And you created an entire system to help other families thrive too. You know about Lighthouse? Victoria asked, surprised. Every pediatrician in South Carolina knows about Lighthouse. We refer families to you constantly. You changed the entire game for autism support in this region. I didn't do it alone. No, but you started it. You were brave enough to transform your pain into purpose. Dr. Martinez turned to Thomas. And you, young man, are proof that an autism diagnosis isn't a sentence. It's just information. What you do with that information is what determines your life. Correct, Thomas agreed. Autism is part of who I am. Not all of me, but a significant part. And I'm okay with that. More than okay. I'm happy being who I am. Can I hug you? Dr. Martinez asked suddenly, tears streaming down her face. I know you might not like physical contact, so it's completely okay if you don't. A quick hug is acceptable, Thomas allowed. 3 seconds, no more. She laughed through her tears and gave a brief but meaningful hug. Thank you for letting me see that the work I do, making these difficult diagnoses, sometimes leads to beautiful outcomes. It always leads to beautiful outcomes, Victoria said, when families have the right support. That's why Lighthouse exists, to ensure that no family leaves offices like this feeling alone. As they were leaving, Dr. Martinez called out, Victoria? Yes. Thank you for coming back, for showing me that that terrible day 10 years ago was actually the first day of something magnificent. I'll remember that the next time I have to deliver a devastating diagnosis to frightened parents. And when you do, Victoria said, give them my number. Tell them there's someone who understands, that there's a community waiting, that they're not alone. I will. I promise. In the car ride home, Thomas was unusually contemplative. Mommy, he finally said. Yes, my love. 10 years ago, when you heard I was autistic, were you sad? Victoria chose her words carefully. I was scared, not because you were autistic, but because I didn't know how to help you. I didn't know if I would be a good enough mother to give you what you needed. But you were good enough. I tried to be. No, you were. You gave me everything. Therapy, love, acceptance, support. And most importantly, you taught me that being autistic isn't less. It's just different. That's the greatest gift you could have given me. You taught me as much as I taught you, Victoria said honestly. You taught me about strength I didn't know I had, about love that knows no bounds, about how beauty exists and forms the world doesn't always immediately recognize. That's poetic, Thomas observed. You're not usually poetic. Caleb laughed. You bring out the poet in her, Thomas. Thomas considered. Do I affect people that way? Making them see the world differently? You do, Caleb confirmed. You taught me to slow down, to notice patterns I never would have noticed, to value direct honesty over insincere kindness. You made me a better person. Interesting, Thomas said. So my autism doesn't just affect me. It affects everyone around me in positive ways. Exactly, Victoria said. That's why I hate it when people say they want to cure autism. Why cure something that brings so much unique perspective, so much different beauty to the world? Mommy, yes. Thank you for not trying to cure me, for letting me be myself. Always, my love. Always. They drove back to Charleston in comfortable silence, each processing the weight of the day. 10 years. A decade of growth, struggle, transformation. And it was just beginning. November arrived with chilly winds and change in the air. The Unsupported Mothers Project had completed its first month of operation, and the results were already transformative. 123 families had received emergency grants. 28 mothers had enrolled in the educational program. 50 mentor-mentee pairs had been formed. But Victoria was about to announce something even bigger. It was Thursday morning, and she was in the governor's office in Columbia. Henry McMaster sat behind his imposing desk, but his expression was warm. Mrs. Santos Richardson, thank you for coming. Thank you for seeing me, Governor. Let me get straight to the point. The work you've done with Lighthouse is extraordinary, and the Unsupported Mothers Project, frankly, is doing what the state should have done decades ago. Thank you, sir. So I want to propose something. A full partnership between the state of South Carolina and the Lighthouse Network. $50 million in state funding over the next 5 years to expand to all 46 counties in the state to ensure that every family with an autistic child, no matter where they live, has access to the resources you've created. Victoria could barely process the numbers. 50 million, 50 million. But there's a condition. What? You'd have to work with the Department of Health and Human Services. There would be state oversight, reporting requirements, the inevitable bureaucracy that comes with public money. What if this compromises what makes Lighthouse work? The flexibility, the rapid response, the dignity over process. Then we don't do that. the governor said simply. I'm not trying to absorb and bureaucratize your work. I'm trying to amplify it, but only if we can do it in a way that preserves the heart of what you've built. Victoria thought, 50 million, 46 counties, thousands of additional families. The reach was tempting, but at what cost? Can I have time to consider? Talk to my team, to the families we serve. Of course, but Victoria. He leaned forward. Think big. You've proven the model. You've proven it works. Now it's time to scale, to make South Carolina a national model for autism support. And you're the only person who can lead this. I'll think about it. I promise. That night, Victoria called an emergency meeting with her inner circle, Caleb, Evelyn, Eleanor, Robert Harrison, and Patricia, representing the families they served. $50 million. Evelyn whistled as Victoria finished explaining. That's transformative. But at what cost? Patricia countered. We love Lighthouse because it's not bureaucratic. Because when we need help, we get help. Not paperwork. Not 6-month approval processes. If the state gets involved, will that change? Not necessarily, Caleb said. If we structure it right. If we maintain operational autonomy, but accept financial oversight, it's possible to have both. But is it likely? Eleanor asked. Governments aren't exactly known for flexibility. True, Robert agreed. But you have an advantage. You've built something that works. You have data proving impact. You can negotiate from a position of strength. Victoria had been quiet listening. Finally, she spoke. There's another consideration. If we grow so big so fast, I lose personal contact. I can't know every family. I can't be present the way I have been. And that's always been the heart of Lighthouse, that it's not just services, it's community. So you delegate, Evelyn said. Train regional directors who share your vision. Create a structure that maintains your values even when you can't be physically present. Or, Patricia said softly, you decide that smaller and personal is better than big and impersonal. And there's no shame in that. You've already changed thousands of lives. You don't need to save the entire state to have done extraordinary work. The group fell silent, considering both sides. Can I say something? A new voice spoke. Everyone turned. Thomas was in the doorway. No one had noticed him arrive. Of course, my love, Victoria said. This decision affects you too. Thomas entered, sitting in the only empty chair. I heard you talking about staying small or growing big. And what do you think? Caleb asked. I think both can be right. It depends on the goal. Thomas clasped his hands together, something he did when he was processing complex ideas. If the goal is for mom to know each family personally, then growing is bad. But if the goal is for each family to have access to the support they need, then not growing means some families go without. That's very wise, Thomas, Evelyn said. It's not wisdom, it's logic. He looked at Victoria. Mommy, you always told me that autism doesn't limit me. It just changes how I do things. Maybe it's the same with Lighthouse. Growing up doesn't change what it is. It just changes how it operates. But what if we lose the heart of it? Victoria asked. The personal connection? You've already lost the personal connection with some families. Thomas pointed out matter-of-factly. There are 15 centers. You can't be in all of them simultaneously. But each center still has heart, because you've trained people who care. So you scale that. You train more people who care. From the mouths of babes, Victoria thought. Or in this case, from the mouths of a brutally honest autistic teenager. He's right, Robert said. You've already proven that the model can scale without losing its soul. 15 centers, values intact. Why not 46? Because 15 I can still monitor. 46 is impossible. So you build a structure that self-monitors, Evelyn suggested. Regular family satisfaction surveys, impact metrics, quality audits, a system that maintains accountability without you needing to be in person everywhere. Victoria looked around the table. Her husband, her son, her mentor, her mother-in-law, her biggest donor, her first client family. Everyone had different perspectives, but they all wanted the same thing, Maximum impact without compromising values. I'll sleep on it, she decided. I have a week to respond to the governor. I'll use that time to truly consider what's right. But that night, lying in bed next to Caleb, she knew what her answer would be. She'd known ever since Thomas had spoken. I'll accept it, she whispered in the dark. I know, Caleb replied, because you never took the easy path. You always took the path that helps the most people. I'm terrified. You were also terrified when you opened the first lighthouse, and when you expanded to 3 states, and when you launched the Mothers Without Support project. Fear has never stopped you before. What if I fail? What if I grow so big that I lose what made it work? Then you adjust. You always adjust. It's what you do. Caleb turned to face her in the darkness. But you won't fail, because you're not doing this alone. You have a team. You have a community. You have a family. You have me. Always. Always. A week later, Victoria stood at a press conference alongside Governor McMaster, announcing the partnership. Today marks a new chapter for special needs support in South Carolina, the governor declared. Through a partnership between the state and the Lighthouse Network, we will ensure that every family in every county has access to life-changing resources. Victoria took the microphone. This expansion represents more than growth. It represents commitment. A commitment that no mother will have to sit in a doctor's office, hearing a terrifying diagnosis, and feeling completely alone. A commitment that no child will go without therapies because their family can't afford them. A commitment that community overcomes isolation. The questions came thick and fast. How will you maintain quality while scaling so dramatically? Through rigorous training, constant supervision, and unwavering commitment to our core values. Each new center director will undergo 6 months of training. Each center will be evaluated quarterly, not only by metrics, but by family satisfaction. Some critics say that government partnerships inevitably lead to bureaucratization. How do you respond? By saying that structure is not the enemy of compassion. You can have both process and heart. And if we start to see that bureaucracy is harming families, we will have contractual autonomy to adjust. When will the new centers open? The site selection process begins immediately. The first group of 10 new centers should open by June, the second group by December. All 46 counties will be served by the end of 2026. And you personally, how will you manage such a massive operation? Victoria paused, choosing her words carefully. I will do what every good leader does. I will empower others. I will delegate. I will trust the incredible team we've built. And I will remember that my job is not to do everything, but to ensure everything is done with integrity, with compassion, with excellence. After the press conference, when the cameras stopped, the governor pulled Victoria aside. You know you're about to become one of the most influential women in special needs policy in the country, right? I'm not interested in influence. I'm interested in impact. Hopefully, you'll have both. He smiled. And when you do, when they prove this model works at the state level, other states will want to replicate it. You'll be starting a national movement. One step at a time, Governor. First, we make it work here. It's already working here. Now we're just making it work for everyone. That night, the original lighthouse in Charleston was fuller than Victoria had ever seen. Current families, former families, staff, donors, volunteers. Everyone had come for the impromptu celebration. Patricia brought cake. Carmen decorated with balloons. Rachel curated a playlist of songs, carefully selected to be sensory-friendly for the autistic children present. And Thomas, surprisingly, offered to play. I wrote something, he announced, about Lighthouse, about community, about how broken people come together and become strong together. He sat down at the piano in the community center and began to play. The piece was unlike anything he had created before. It began fragmented, discordant chords that didn't seem to fit together. But slowly, gradually, patterns emerged. Individual melodies began to intertwine. And in the end, it all resolved into beautiful, complex harmony. It was the perfect metaphor. People arriving broken, disconnected, and through community, finding their place, finding harmony. When he finished, There wasn't a dry eye in the room. "Thomas," Victoria said, her voice choked with emotion. "That was processing," he said simply. "I processed what lighthouse means through music. It seems fitting, since music is how I best communicate." "It's perfect," Caleb said. "Absolutely perfect." Eleanor hugged her grandson, a hug longer than the usual 3 seconds, and Thomas allowed it because he understood the moment required it. "My grandson, the composer," she said proudly. Who would have imagined 10 years ago that that 4-year-old boy who couldn't speak, who rocked and screamed, would become this? "Mom imagined," Thomas said matter-of-factly. "She always said I was perfect. Even when the world said I was broken, she saw what I could be." Victoria was crying openly now. "You've always been perfect, my love. Since day one." "I know. But it took time for me to know. You had to teach me to see what you saw." Patricia approached, Marcus beside her. The boy, now 10, had grown so much. He was still autistic, still had challenges, but he was so different from the terrified boy of 6 years ago. "Marcus wants to say something," Patricia announced. Marcus looked at Victoria, not directly in the eyes. He still struggled with eye contact, but in her general direction. "Thank you," he said, clearly practiced but sincere, "for making this a place where Mommy doesn't cry anymore, where I can be me." Victoria knelt down to his level. "You're welcome, Marcus. But you know what? You make this place special as much as I do. Every child here, every family, you make Lighthouse what it is." "We are community," Marcus said, repeating a phrase he'd clearly heard many times. "Yes, we are community." One by one, families reached out, sharing stories of transformation, of moments where Lighthouse had made a difference, of times when knowing they weren't alone had meant everything. And Victoria listened to each story, hugged each mother, celebrated each child, because this was why she did what she did. Not for the awards or recognition, not for the media coverage or political influence, but for these moments, these connections, these transformed lives. At midnight, after everyone had left, Victoria, Caleb, and Thomas were alone in the center, cleaning disposable cups, stacking chairs, turning off lights. "Today was a good day," Thomas observed. "It was a great day," Victoria agreed. "Mommy, yes, my love. When you die, not soon, I hope, but eventually when you're old, will Lighthouse continue?" The question was so characteristically Thomas. Direct, practical, without guile. Yes, it was built to last. It has a permanent foundation, a strong structure, clear values. It will continue long after I'm gone. Good, because many children will need it. Children who haven't even been born yet. Children who will be diagnosed and whose mothers will need to know they're not alone. You're right. So when you die, your work continues. That's a kind of immortality. Caleb laughed softly. "Thomas, are you a philosopher now?" "No, I'm pragmatic, but I recognize that legacy is a way of transcending mortality, and Mom is building a legacy that will survive generations." "Where do you get these things from?" Victoria asked, amazed. "From you. You taught me that impact matters, that how you affect others is how you live even after death. You talk about it all the time. You just don't use such direct words." It was true. She was talking about it, about building something that lasted, about changing lives, about creating ripples that continued long after the stone was thrown. "You're very wise for 15, Caleb said. "I just have different processing. I see patterns others don't." They finished cleaning in comfortable silence, then locked up the center. Outside, Charleston was quiet. It was a weeknight, late, most people asleep. But to Victoria, it was as if the city were alive with possibility. 46 counties, $50 million, thousands of families. The Lighthouse had begun as a mother's desperation. It was becoming the hope of a state, and someday, perhaps, a model for the nation. "Let's go home," she said, taking Caleb and Thomas's hands. "Tomorrow is another day, and there's a lot of work ahead." "There's always a lot of work," Thomas observed. "Yes, but it's good work. Work that matters." "The best kind of work," Thomas agreed. And together, Mother, father, son. Family chosen and built through trial and love. They went home, ready for whatever came next. Because when you have purpose, when you have community, when you have love that doesn't give up, you can face anything. January 2025 arrived with a biting chill and anticipation in the air. Thomas was just 3 months into his European tour. 14 concerts in 9 countries over 6 weeks. It would be his first international trip, his first extended time away from home, his first real test of his emerging independence. And he was terrified. "I can't do this," he announced one night at dinner, pushing food around his plate without eating. Victoria and Caleb exchanged worried glances. Thomas rarely expressed fear so directly. "What specifically is scaring you?" Caleb asked gently. "Everything. New environments, different routines, languages I don't understand, unfamiliar foods, too much new sensory stimulation." Thomas was starting to sway slightly, a sign of growing anxiety. "Thomas," Victoria said calmly, "you don't have to do this tour if you don't want to. We can cancel." But Professor Morris has already booked the rooms, and people have bought tickets, and it's an opportunity most pianists never get. "And none of that matters if it makes you unhappy," Caleb interrupted firmly. "You're 15. You shouldn't have to do something that terrifies you just because other people are counting on it." Thomas stopped rocking, processing. "But I want to do it. I want to play for international audiences. I want to share my music. I'm afraid autism will make me fail." "Oh, my love." Victoria walked over to him, kneeling beside his chair. "Autism doesn't make you fail. It just means you need different supports to succeed." "What supports?" "How about," Caleb suggested, "one of us goes with you?" Thomas looked up hopefully. "Really? Sure. We thought you'd want to do it regardless, so we didn't offer. But if you want company, we can absolutely go." "Can Daddy go?" Thomas asked immediately. "No offense, Mom, but you have a lot on your plate with the lighthouse expansion. And Dad calms me down." Victoria felt a pang, not of jealousy, but of pride. Pride that her son had such a strong bond with his chosen father. "No offense taken," she said honestly. "And Dad, Caleb, can you do this? 6 weeks in Europe?" "My work is remote," Caleb said, "and Thomas is a priority. I can absolutely do this. But there are more supports I'll need," Thomas continued, listing methodically. "I'll need noise-canceling headphones for travel. And family meals. Can I bring protein bars and non-perishables? And my blanket. And decompression time after each concert before social interactions. And let's make a list," Victoria interrupted gently, "of everything you need to feel safe. And then we'll make sure you have it all." They spent the next hour doing just that. Thomas listed every need, every concern, every what if. And Victoria and Caleb worked through each one, creating plans, identifying solutions, building support structures. "What if I have a sensory crisis before the performance?" Thomas asked. "Then you use your regulation strategies we practiced," Caleb said. "And if they don't work, we communicate with the concert organizers that you need more time. The world won't end if the performance is 30 minutes late. What if the food is sensory intolerable? You bring your own familiar foods," Victoria reminded, "and we research restaurants in advance that have options you can tolerate. What if I become nonverbal? You have your communication app on your phone, and Daddy can read your needs even without words." Question by question, worry by worry, they built a safety net, and slowly, Victoria saw Thomas's anxiety ease. "Okay," he finally said, "I think I can do this, with Dad there, with the right supports." "Are you sure?" Caleb pressed. "Because we can still cancel if..." "No, I want to do it. I was just scared because I didn't know how to accommodate my autism. Now I have a plan. Plans make me feel safe." "Then let's do this," Victoria said. "You and Dad, conquering Europe, one concert hall at a time." The next 3 months were spent in intense preparation. Thomas practiced 6 hours a day, perfecting his repertoire. Caleb researched each city they would visit, identifying autism-friendly resources, calming environments, safe food options. Victoria coordinated with the tour organizers, explaining Thomas's specific needs, negotiating accommodations. And in April, the time came. Charleston International Airport was packed. Family, friends, lighthouse staff, families who had been impacted by Victoria's work. Everyone came to say goodbye. Eleanor hugged Thomas deeply. "I'll miss you, dear." "6 weeks, Grandma. Then I'll be back." "I know, but I'll still miss you." She turned to Caleb. "Take care of my grandson." "With my life," Caleb promised. Patricia handed Thomas a wrapped package. "Small gift. For good luck." Thomas opened it carefully. Inside was a journal with a smooth blue cover, a texture he liked. "For your reflections," Patricia explained. "Professor Morris said artists often document tours. He thought you might want to do the same." "Thank you. I'll use it." One by one, people said goodbye. And then Victoria was alone with Thomas, her boy who was no longer a boy but almost a man, about to do something extraordinary. "I'm proud of you," she said, holding his hands. "Not just for this tour, but for who you've become, for facing your fears, for asking for the support you need, for being authentically yourself." "You taught me all of this," Thomas said, "to be okay with myself, to not be ashamed of needing different things, to see autism not as a flaw, but as a difference. And now you're going to show Europe what an autistic teenager can do when supported, believed, and allowed to shine." "That's a lot of pressure," Thomas observed. Victoria laughed. "Okay, forget it. Just go and play beautifully, and have an adventure with your dad, and come back safe." "I can do that." One last hug, one last wave, and they were gone. Through security, to the gate, to the plane that would take them first to New York, then London, then all over Europe. Victoria watched until she could no longer see them. And then, for the first time in 15 years, she was alone. She wasn't without support. Eleanor was there, and Sarah, and her entire lighthouse community. But her son, her central purpose for a decade and a half, was across the ocean. "How are you?" Eleanor asked, coming to her side. "I don't know. Proud. Terrified? Both. Both are normal. You just let your son go into an experience that will change him. Of course you're feeling everything. What if something goes wrong? What if he has a severe crisis and Caleb can't help him? What if? Then they deal with it." Eleanor interrupted gently. "Victoria, you raised that boy to be resilient, to have strategies. And Caleb is an exceptional father. They'll be fine. You're right. I know you are." Victoria took a deep breath. "This is just the first big test of letting go. And you're passing it, letting him have wings, letting him fly. That's what good mothers do." The first message came 10 hours later. "Thomas, we landed in London. The plane was tolerable with headphones. Caleb let me have a window to observe cloud patterns. 8 out of 10 experience." Victoria laughed through her tears. 8 out of 10. Coming from Thomas, that was practically effusive. Over the next few weeks, messages came regularly, but not constantly. Thomas sent photos of concert halls, of food he found tolerable, of interesting vistas that appealed to his love of patterns. And he sent updates on the performances. "Thomas, first concert at the Royal Albert Hall was a success. Audience of 1,200. I didn't make eye contact with any of them, but it didn't matter. The music spoke. Thomas, Berlin. The acoustics in this hall are perfect. The mathematics of reverberating sound is beautiful. I played the best I've ever played. Thomas, Paris. The concert was good, but French food has too much texture. Living on baguette and butter. Dad Caleb says that's very French of me. Thomas, Amsterdam. Professor Morris was right. European audiences do listen differently. Quieter. More focused. I like that." And then, 4 weeks into the tour, a different message came. "Thomas, Mom, I need to tell you something. I met another musician. She's 17 and plays the violin. And she's also autistic. Her name is Sophia. She makes me feel less alone." Victoria stared at the message for a long time. Her son, making social connections on his own, with another neurodivergent person who understood. It was everything she'd ever hoped for him. "Victoria, tell me about Sophia." "Thomas, she's from Spain. She's been playing the violin since she was 5. She has autism, but it's different from mine. She's more verbal, but has more sensory difficulties. She likes patterns as much as I do. We talked about the mathematics of music for 3 hours, and she didn't think it was strange. Daddy Caleb says I'm making friends, but I think it's more than that. I think I've found someone who understands my language. Victoria, that's wonderful, my love. I'm so happy for you. Thomas, she's going to Juilliard next year, in New York, which is only 4 hours from Charleston. Could we maybe make music together in the future? Victoria was crying now, tears of pure joy. Her son, who had struggled so much with social connections, had found kindred spirit. Victoria, we can absolutely explore this. The sky's the limit, Thomas. Thomas, not literally. I know you're being metaphorical, but thank you. See you in 2 weeks. Love you. Victoria, love you too, my beautiful boy. When Thomas and Caleb finally returned in May, the airport was packed again. But this time it was a celebration, not a farewell. Thomas emerged from customs looking different. Not physically, still the same skinny, brown-haired teenager. But there was something in the way he carried himself. Confidence, certainty, as if he'd proven something to himself. Mommy, he waved. Rare for him to initiate eye contact or social gestures. But he did. Victoria ran to him, hugged him tightly. I missed you. I missed you too. But it was amazing, Mommy. So amazing. Caleb stood behind him, smiling broadly. He looked tired but radiant. He was amazing. Absolutely amazing. Tell me everything, Victoria said, still holding Thomas. But Thomas was looking around the crowd. Sophia, who? Victoria asked, confused. And then he saw it. A girl, maybe 17, dark hair pulled back in a ponytail, carrying a violin case. She was standing shyly a few feet back, clearly nervous. Sophia came, Thomas said, surprised and clearly delighted. You're here. My parents had a business trip to Charleston, Sophia explained in English with a charming Spanish accent. When you told me where you lived, I convinced them to bring me. I hope that's okay. More than okay, Thomas said, and for the first time in her life, Victoria saw her son give a spontaneous hug to someone other than his immediate family. Sophia's parents, an elegant couple in their 40s, approached. Mrs. Santos Richardson? I'm Maria Rivera, and this is my husband, Carlos. We hope it's okay to drop by like this. Sophia has been talking about Thomas nonstop since they met in Berlin. Of course it's okay, Victoria said, still processing. Her son had a friend who traveled across the continent to see him. You all should have dinner with us tonight. Dinner at their house was revelatory. Sophia and Thomas sat side by side, talking at a surprising speed about music theory, mathematical patterns, and how their brains process sound differently. Most people don't understand, Sophia said, gesturing excitedly. They hear music and feel emotion. We hear music and see architecture. It's completely different. Exactly, Thomas agreed. Music isn't about feelings for me. It's about patterns, structure, the mathematics of how notes interact. But it creates emotion in others, Sophia added, which is strange but also beautiful. We create something we don't feel the way others do, but which moves them deeply. Victoria watched, fascinated. She had spent 15 years helping Thomas communicate. But this was communication on a completely different level. This was someone fluently speaking his language. Maria Rivera watched too, tears in her eyes. This is the first time, she said quietly to Victoria. I've seen Sophia so comfortable with her peers. Usually she's so anxious, so masked. But with Thomas, she can be authentically herself, Victoria finished. I know, it's the same for Thomas. You've created something special with your son, Carlos said. The confidence he has in himself, the way he doesn't apologize for who he is. That's rare in young people with autism. It took a lot of work, Victoria admitted. A lot of love, a lot of support, a lot of refusing to let the world tell him he needed to change. It shows, Maria said, and it gave him a foundation that will allow him to thrive. Just like Sophia. Together, they're going to do incredible things. after the Riveras left, with promises of staying in touch and visiting again in the future. Thomas went straight to his room, but unlike before the tour, when he would have completely isolated himself, he left the door ajar, a silent invitation. Victoria knocked lightly. "May I come in?" "Yes." She sat on the edge of his bed. "So, Europe. It was transformative," Thomas said, and there was a maturity in his voice that hadn't been there 6 weeks ago. "Not just the music, although that was incredible, but I proved something to myself." "What?" "That I can do difficult things. That autism doesn't limit me. It just means I need different supports. That there are others like me, like Sophia, and that I'm not alone in the world." "You've never been alone," Victoria said gently. "I know. I had you, Daddy Caleb, Grandma, community. But this was different. It was peer. Someone who understands without me having to explain. Sophia knows what it's like to have sensory overload. She knows what it's like to process the world through patterns. She knows what it's like to love something so deeply, music, but not be able to express why in words neurotypicals understand. And that makes you feel less alone, less different, or maybe not less different, but more okay with being different because there are others who are differently different too." Victoria had to smile at Thomas's characteristic logic. "There's something else," Thomas continued. "The tour made me think about the future, about what I want to do." "What do you want to do?" "I want to study neuroscience. Specifically, how autistic brains process music differently. And I want to use that to develop music therapies for other autistic children, to combine my two things, music and science, into something that helps others." Tears welled in Victoria's eyes. "Thomas, that's beautiful." "It's practical," he corrected. "I have unique abilities. I should use them to contribute." "You learned that from me, didn't you?" "I learned many things from you. But yes, especially this. You took your pain, my diagnosis, Dylan leaving, and turned it into purpose. I observed it. Now I'm replicating the methodology." Victoria laughed through her tears. "Never change, Thomas. Never change your unique and perfect way of seeing the world." "I won't. Why would I? My way works. Yes, it works perfectly." June brought a heat wave and more changes. The first 10 new lighthouse centers opened simultaneously across South Carolina. Greenville, Spartanburg, Florence, Myrtle Beach, Rock Hill, Sumter, Anderson, Hilton Head, Aiken, and Conway all now had access to the same resources that families in Charleston had had for years. Victoria traveled to each opening, cutting ribbons, meeting families, training staff. It was exhausting but rewarding. And at each center, she saw the same thing. Mothers crying with relief. Finally, someone saw them. Someone understood. Someone cared. In Greenville, a mother named Rebecca approached her after the opening ceremony. "My son was diagnosed 3 months ago," she said, her voice shaking. "And I was so lost, so scared, not knowing where to turn, what to do. My husband, he left, said he couldn't cope." The story was painfully familiar. And then I heard about Lighthouse opening here. And I came today hoping. I don't know, information maybe? But what I found was community. Other mothers who understand. Resources I can actually access. Hope. Hope is why we do this, Victoria said, hugging her. "You're not alone, Rebecca. You'll never be alone again." "How do you do it?" Rebecca asked. "How do you help so many people without burning out?" "Honestly, some days I almost burn out. Some days it's all too much. But then I remember why I started. I remember being exactly where you are now. Terrified, alone, desperate. And if I can spare another mother that pain, it's worth any exhaustion I feel. You're an inspiration." "No, I'm just a mother who refused to give up. And you are too. You're here, seeking help, fighting for your son. That makes you a warrior." Rebecca left that conversation visibly lighter, and Victoria saw this again and again, the power of simply being seen, being heard, knowing she's not alone. In July, something unexpected happened. Victoria received a call from a national TV producer. "Ms. Santos Richardson, this is Jennifer Chun from 60 Minutes. We'd like to do a segment on you and Lighthouse. The journey from abandoned mother to national leader in autism advocacy. Would you be interested? 60 Minutes, one of the most respected news platforms in the country. I need to think about it. Of course, but let me tell you, your story is exactly the kind that needs to be told, and not just by you, but by the thousands of families you represent. Victoria talked to Caleb that night. It's huge exposure, he said. National, maybe international. I know, and part of me wants to do it, for the cause, for the families. But another part is terrified of being so public, of having my life, Thomas's pain, all dissected on national TV. Thomas would have to agree, Caleb pointed out. If they're going to film him, he deserves a choice. They talked to Thomas over breakfast the next morning. 60 Minutes wants to do a story about our family, Victoria explained. About how we navigated your diagnosis, how Lighthouse started, how families can thrive. But it would involve filming you, talking about your autism publicly. We'll only do it if you're comfortable. Thomas thought, methodically eating his waffles, still cut into exact 4 squares, some patterns never changing. Who would watch? He asked finally. Millions of people, probably. And what would they learn? That autistic people can do extraordinary things. That families can thrive with the right support. That difference doesn't mean less. Those are important messages, Thomas agreed. And if my story can help other autistic children feel less alone, or help other mothers know they're not alone, then I should do it. Are you sure? Victoria pressed. Because once it's out there, you can't undo it. People will know you're autistic. Mommy, Thomas said patiently, I already know I'm autistic. People knowing doesn't change who I am either. It only changes if they have the information to avoid making assumptions. When did you become so wise? Caleb asked, pride obvious. I've always been wise. It just took you time to realize. Filming took place in August. A 60 Minutes crew spent a week with them. They filmed at the Lighthouse, at their home, and even followed Thomas to a piano lesson with Professor Morris. And they conducted long, in-depth interviews. Tell me about the day of your diagnosis. The journalist, Leslie Stahl, asked Victoria. And Victoria told her. Everything. The fear, Dylan's abandonment, the feeling that the world had ended. And now, Leslie said, 10 years later, you've built an empire of support. What's changed? I've changed, Victoria said simply. I realized that the diagnosis wasn't the end. It was just information. And with the right information, the right support, unconditional love, there's no limit to what kids like Thomas can achieve. They interviewed Thomas as well. Some people say autism is a disability. Leslie said, how do you feel about that? It's a disability in the sense that it makes some things more difficult. Thomas replied matter-of-factly. But it's also a skill in the sense that it allows me to see patterns others don't. It's both. It depends on how you look at it. Would you wish you weren't autistic? Thomas thought carefully. No, because if I weren't autistic, I wouldn't be me. I'd be someone different, and I like who I am. Even with challenges? Everyone has challenges. Mine are just different. Not better or worse, just different. The interview with Caleb was particularly emotional. You're not Thomas's biological father, Leslie pointed out. Why did you choose this life? Because you loved Victoria, Caleb said honestly. And when you love someone, you love your family. Thomas came with the package, but I quickly realized I wasn't just accepting a package. I was gaining a son, an extraordinary son who taught me as much as I hope I taught him. Thomas's biological father abandoned him. How do you ensure Thomas knows he won't do the same? Showing up every day, in the 3 a.m. crises, in the piano performances, on the hard days and the easy ones. Love isn't a feeling, it's action. And I show Thomas through my actions that I am his father. I always will be. Leslie turned to Thomas, who was watching the interview. Thomas, how does it feel to hear this? Grateful, Thomas said simply, and happy that Daddy Caleb chose me, even when he didn't have to. There wasn't a dry eye in the filming room. The episode aired in September, prime time on Sunday. Victoria, Caleb, Thomas, Eleanor, and half a dozen lighthouse families gathered at their house to watch it together. And when it ended, 22 minutes of their lives, stories, struggles, triumphs, silence filled the room. Then Patricia spoke. "You did it. You really did it. You told our story, so the world will hear." Victoria's phone began to explode. Messages, emails, calls. From all over the country. From everyone. Mothers sharing their own stories. Organizations wanting to replicate the lighthouse model. Donors offering support. Politicians wanting to discuss national policy. "It's amazing," Victoria said, looking at her screen full of notifications. "It's impactful," Caleb corrected. "It's exactly what I hoped. For this story to resonate, for it to change conversations, for it to make people understand that families like ours matter." Thomas was quiet, processing. "Finally, I'm glad we did this. Even if it means people will know a lot about me. Because if it helps even one child feel less alone, it's worth it." The 60 Minutes episode changed everything. In the following weeks, Victoria received invitations from 16 different states wanting to replicate the lighthouse model. Governors called personally. Health secretaries requested meetings. National autism organizations wanted partnerships. It was overwhelming. "I can't do all this," Victoria told Caleb one night, looking at the stack of proposals on her desk. "I'm barely managing South Carolina's expansion. How can I possibly help entire states build systems?" "You can't. Not alone." Caleb took the proposals and began organizing them. "But what about creating a training institute? A place where leaders from other states can come and learn the lighthouse model. Then they come back and implement it in their own states." "A training institute," Victoria repeated. "Like an academy for autism advocacy?" "Exactly. You develop curriculum. You train trainers. They bring knowledge back. You multiply the impact without having to be in person in 50 places." It was a brilliant idea. And frightening. That would require massive funding. Installation. Staff. "You just reached millions of people on national TV." Caleb reminded her. "I bet funding won't be a problem." He was right. Victoria created a formal proposal for a National Lighthouse Institute for Autism Support. A national training center that would teach community leaders, health professionals, politicians, and parents how to create local support systems that mirrored lighthouse values. The proposal went to 10 major autism foundations in the country. All 10 responded positively. 6 offered funding. In October 2025, just 3 months after the 60 Minutes episode, the National Lighthouse Institute was officially announced. $25 million in initial funding. Installation in Columbia, South Carolina. First class of trainees scheduled for January 2026. "You're changing the entire system," Robert Harrison said at the press conference. "Not just helping families one at a time, but changing how the entire country thinks about and supports autism." But with growth came unexpected tension. Patricia sought out Victoria one October day. Her expression worried. "We need to talk. About the original lighthouse." "What happened?" "Nothing happened. That's what's not happening." Patricia sat down heavily. "Vic, when was the last time you actually spent time at the original center? Not just flitting between meetings, but actually present with families?" Victoria thought. "Had it been weeks? Maybe a month? I've been busy with expansion." "I know, and the work you're doing is incredible. But the families here, the original ones who've known you since the beginning, are feeling your absence. A mother asked me yesterday if you still cared about us, or if you'd gone on to bigger things." The accusation stung because it held truth. "I never wanted anyone to feel this way," Victoria said, tears burning. "I know, but impact isn't intention. You've become so big, so national, that you're losing touch with where you started." "What do I do?" "Remember," Patricia said gently. "Remember why you started. Go back to your roots. Spend time with real families. Not as a CEO or a national leader, but as Victoria, the mother who understands because she's lived it." That night, Victoria canceled all meetings for the following week. She spent the entire week at the original lighthouse, sitting with mothers in the family support room, playing with children in therapy sessions. Simply present. And she remembered. She remembered why it all had started. It wasn't for glory or recognition. It was for moments like these. A mother crying with relief because someone finally understood. A child smiling because they felt safe. A community forming around shared experiences. "Thank you," she said to Patricia at the end of the week. "I needed this. I needed to get back to what matters." "The national work matters too," Patricia said. "Just remember that the heart will always be local. Individual connections. One family at a time. I won't forget again. I promise." November brought Thanksgiving, and for the first time in years, Victoria had no event to plan or trip to take. Just a quiet dinner at home with her family. Eleanor cooked turkey. Caleb made stuffing. Thomas contributed meticulously prepared mashed potatoes with the exact proportions of butter and milk he could tolerate. Victoria made pumpkin pie. At the table, surrounded by people she loved, Victoria felt profound gratitude. "I want to do a gratitude sharing lap," she announced. Thanksgiving tradition. Everyone says what they're grateful for. "I'll start," Eleanor offered. "I'm grateful for second chances, for family that welcomed me when I didn't deserve it, for a grandson who teaches me something new every day, and for a daughter." She looked at Victoria, "who is everything I wished my biological son had been." "My turn," Caleb said. "I'm grateful for spilling coffee on my laptop 8 years ago, for a second chance at love, for a son who makes me a better man, and for a wife who teaches me every day what it means to fight for what matters." Thomas considered carefully. "I'm grateful for family that lets me be authentically me, for music that gives me a voice when words fail, for Sophia and friends who understand my language, and for Mom who never gave up, even when the world told her to." All eyes turned to Victoria. "I'm grateful," she began, her voice already breaking, "for the journey. I know it sounds strange, to be grateful for pain, for abandonment, for struggles. But if Dylan hadn't left, I never would have discovered my strength. If Thomas hadn't been autistic, I never would have found my purpose. If I hadn't lost everything, I never would have built anything meaningful." She looked around the table. "I'm grateful Dylan left me because he made space for Caleb. I'm grateful for Thomas's autism because it taught me to see the world differently. I'm grateful for every obstacle, every closed door, every moment where I thought I couldn't go on, because all those moments brought me here, to this table, with this family, doing this work. I'm grateful," she continued, "for Eleanor who chose to come back and do things differently, for Patricia and all the mothers who trusted me when I had only dreams, for Evelyn, Margaret, Robert, everyone who believed when they had no reason to believe. And I'm especially grateful for you too." She looked at Caleb and Thomas, "for showing me that family isn't blood. It's choice. It's showing up. It's loving through thick and thin. You are my heart, my home, my everything." There wasn't a dry eye at the table. To family, to love that doesn't give up, to journeys that break us and reshape us, and to Victoria, who took pain and created hope. Glasses clinked, turkey was served, conversation flowed, and Victoria allowed herself to simply be. Not CEO, not national leader, not public figure, just Victoria, mother, wife, chosen daughter, woman who had survived the impossible and thrived. December arrived with the first snowfall of the season, rare for Charleston, but magical when it happened. And it brought news Victoria hadn't expected. Dylan had left a life insurance policy. Small, just $20,000, but it named Thomas as beneficiary. Why would he do that? Victoria asked the lawyer who called. According to the notary, Mr. Torres changed the beneficiary 3 days before he died. It was originally for charity. It was changed to Thomas at the last minute. A final act of redemption? Or just guilt weighing on him? Victoria decided it didn't matter. The money would go to Thomas's educational fund, to Juilliard if he decided to go, to whatever his future required. Should I tell Thomas? She asked Caleb. He's almost 16, old enough to know. So she did. Thomas processed, silently for a moment. Then, Dylan tried to do something right in the end, even when it was too late. Yes, That doesn't erase that he was a coward. It doesn't erase 15 years of absence. No, but it acknowledges that he was human, flawed but human, capable of regret even if incapable of real change. "You're very wise for 15, Victoria said. "Almost 16, Thomas corrected. "My birthday is in 2 weeks. "I know, my love. How do you want to celebrate?" Thomas thought, "I want a small party, family and close friends, and I want to play a piece I composed about a journey from 4 and nonverbal to 15 and finding my voice." That sounds perfect. Thomas's birthday party took place on a cold but clear December night. The house was full family. Thomas's friends from the Lighthouse Youth Program, Sophia, who had flown in specially from Spain, Professor Morris, Dr. Kim, even Dr. Martinez, who had given the original diagnosis, and Thomas played. The piece he composed was epic, 16 minutes of music that told a story without words. It began discordantly, representing the confusion of the initial diagnosis. It evolved through sections that were clearly struggles, minor chords, uncertain rhythm, but gradually, patterns emerged, melodies intertwined, and in the final minutes, the music exploded into something glorious, complex yet harmonious, different yet beautiful. When it ended, there was no sound except soft sobs from practically everyone in the room. "Thomas," Professor Morris said, his voice thick, "this is professional work, conservatory level. No, beyond conservatory. This is art." "Thank you," Thomas said simply. "I tried to capture the journey, from broken, or what the world thought was broken, to whole. Not because I changed who I am, but because I learned I was never broken to begin with." Dr. Martinez approached. "Thomas, do you remember me?" "Yes. You're the doctor who diagnosed my autism 10 years ago." "I am. And that day, when your parents left my office, I was terrified I'd given you news that would destroy your family." "You didn't destroy. You informed. What people do with information is their choice." "You're right. And your family chose love. They chose to fight. They chose to see you not as a project to fix, but as a person to support." Tears streamed down her face. "You're why I do my work. For moments like this. To see a child I diagnosed thrive so spectacularly. I will thrive even more," Thomas said matter-of-factly. "This is just the beginning." After the party ended, after the guests left, after the cake was put away and the decorations put away, Victoria, Caleb, and Thomas sat together in the living room. 16 years, Victoria said, barely believing it. "How did you grow up so fast?" "Time is constant," Thomas said. "It only seems fast in retrospect." "Always so literal," Caleb said with a smile. "It's how I know how to be." Victoria looked at her son, no longer a boy, a young man on the brink of adulthood, and she felt an overwhelming sense of pride. "Thomas, there's something I want to tell you. Something important." "Okay. You know I love you, right? I always have, since the second you were born." "I know, but I want you to know why I love you. Not just because you're my son, but because you're an extraordinary person. You're kind, honest, talented, resilient. You see the world in a unique way that makes us all richer. And I'm grateful every day that you're my son. And I'm grateful that you're my mother," Thomas replied, "because you let me be me. You never tried to fix me or change me. You just gave me tools to navigate a world that wasn't built for me." "This world will change," Victoria said, "because of people like you. Because of autistic voices finally being heard. The world of the future will be more inclusive, more understanding, better." "I hope so," Thomas said. "But even if it isn't, I'll be okay. Because you taught me that I belong. That my difference is value, not failure. That I am enough just as I am." Caleb pulled them both into a hug. "My family," he said. "Against everything, despite everything, we are the perfect family." And they were. Not flawlessly perfect, but perfect for each other. Built not of blood but of choice. Forged not in ease but in adversity. Held together not by obligation but by love. The kind of love that doesn't give up. The kind that stays. The kind that transforms. March 2026 arrived with the promise of spring and new beginnings. Victoria stood on the stage at the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C., about to receive the National Award for Special Needs Advocacy. It was an honor she never imagined when it all began 11 years ago. But it wasn't the award that made her nervous. It was the speech she would have to give afterward. In the audience were Caleb, Thomas, Eleanor, Patricia, and dozens of Lighthouse families who had traveled to see her. Robert Harrison was there. Evelyn, now retired but still a mentor. Margaret Chen, even some members of Congress who had begun working on national legislation inspired by the Lighthouse model. The presenter stepped up to the microphone. It is my privilege to introduce our honoree tonight. 11 years ago, she was a broke single mother with a son newly diagnosed with severe autism. Her husband had abandoned her. Her business had collapsed. Most people would have given up. But Victoria Santos Richardson turned her pain into purpose. She built the Lighthouse Therapy Center, which now serves more than 10,000 families through 46 centers across South Carolina. She launched the Unsupported Mothers Project, which has provided more than $15 million in direct support to families. And this year, she opened the National Lighthouse Institute, training leaders from 23 states to replicate her transformative model. Applause filled the auditorium, but numbers don't tell the full story. The true measure of Victoria's impact is the thousands of mothers who no longer feel alone, the children who are thriving because they have the support they need, the families who have remained intact because someone cared enough to build a safety net. More applause. Please welcome Victoria Santos Richardson. Victoria took the stage, legs shaky but with firm purpose. She accepted the heavy crystal award, stood behind the podium, and looked out at the sea of faces, and began to speak. 11 years ago, I sat in a doctor's office listening to words I thought would destroy my life. Your son has severe autism. He will need substantial support for the rest of his life. And in that moment, my world fell apart. She paused, letting the words sink in. My husband left a week later. He said he hadn't signed on for this. My business failed. I lost our home. I lost my savings. I lost everything except my son and the determination that, somehow, we would survive. But this story isn't about what I lost. It's about what I found. Victoria looked directly at Thomas in the audience. I found strength I didn't know I had. I found a community of warrior mothers fighting the same battles. I found purpose in transforming my pain into help for others. And I found a truth that changed everything. My son was never broken. It was just that the world wasn't ready for him. Applause interrupted, but she continued. Thomas is 16 now. He's a world-class pianist, starting Juilliard in the fall. He composes music that touches souls. He has friends who love him exactly as he is. He's happy, confident, extraordinary. And yes, he's still autistic, because autism isn't something to cure. It's a different way of being human. And when we stop trying to fix autistic children and start supporting them authentically, magical things happen. Victoria took a deep breath before continuing. But I want to be honest about something. This work I do, this movement we started, it didn't start with noble altruism. It started with desperation. It started with a terrified mother who had no options and had to create her own. And that's what I try to tell the mothers who come to Lighthouse feeling broken. Your pain doesn't have to be the end of your story. It can be the beginning. It can be the catalyst that transforms not just your life, but the lives of countless others. She looked at Eleanor. I've learned that family isn't always blood. My ex-mother-in-law is here today, the mother of the man who abandoned me, and she became more of a mother to me than my own biological mother ever was, because she chose to come back. She chose to do things differently. She chose to love when she didn't have to. Eleanor was crying openly. I've learned that love isn't a feeling that comes naturally. It's a choice we make over and over again, especially when it's hard. She looked at Caleb. My husband is not Thomas's biological father, but he is his real father in every way that matters. Because he showed up, day after day, crisis after crisis. He stayed when he didn't have to. And that is true fatherhood. Caleb wiped his eyes, clearly moved. And I learned that we are never truly alone. even in the darkest moments. There were people, Evelyn Porter, Margaret Chin, Robert Harrison, and so many others, who showed up when I needed them most, who believed when they had no reason to believe, who invested not in a business plan, but in a desperate mother with a dream. She held the award highest. So this award isn't mine. It belongs to every mother who refused to give up. It belongs to every therapist who sees potential where others see only deficit. It belongs to every donor who understood that changing a system is the most important investment they can make. It belongs to every autistic child who teaches the world that different isn't less. It's just different. Victoria paused, emotion rising. And it's especially Thomas. My son, my teacher, my hero. Because he taught me the greatest lesson of all. That when the world says something is impossible, when everyone tells you to give up, when logic says there's no way forward. Her voice broke, but she continued. Sometimes the most radical, most revolutionary, most transformative thing we can do is simply love. Love fiercely. Love unconditionally. Love when it's hard. Love when no one is watching. Love even when the world says it's not worth it. Because love, true love, the kind that doesn't give up, can transform not just one life, but thousands. It can build bridges where there were walls. It can create hope where there was despair. It can literally change the world. Applause echoed through the Kennedy Center, but Victoria wasn't finished. So to every mother watching this who is at the beginning of her journey, who has just received a diagnosis that terrifies her, who feels alone and broken, you are not alone. There is community waiting to welcome you. There is hope, even when you can't see it. And your child, that boy or girl the world says is too much or too different, can surprise you beyond your wildest dreams. It won't be easy. There will be days when you want to give up, days when the pain seems unbearable, days when you wonder if you can take one more step. But I promise this, if you show up day after day, if you refuse to let the world define your child, if you build community around you and accept help when it's offered, if you transform your pain into purpose. Victoria smiled through her tears. You will look back 10 years from now and barely recognize the scared woman you once were, because you will have become a warrior. You will have become a defender. You will have become a force of nature. And your child, the child you say will never thrive, he will surprise you every day in ways big and small. And you will realize that the diagnosis you thought was a curse was actually the greatest blessing in disguise. Because it forced you to slow down, to see the world differently, to appreciate progress that others don't notice, to build a life based not on societal expectations, but on unconditional love. Victoria looked directly into the camera that was broadcasting live. So thank you to every mother who trusted me with her story, to every child who taught me to see beauty in difference, to every partner who believed that together we could build something better, and especially to Dylan Torres, my ex-husband who died 2 years ago, because although your choices caused immense pain, they were also a catalyst for something greater. Your abandonment forced me to find my own strength. Your departure made room for Caleb to enter. Your weakness taught me what true strength looks like. So Dylan, wherever you are, I forgive you. Completely. Not because you deserve forgiveness, but because I deserve peace. And I hope you found peace too. She held up the award one last time. This work continues. Lighthouse is just beginning. And I invite each of you, whether you're a struggling mother, a professional wanting to make a difference, a donor seeking real impact, or just someone who believes everyone deserves dignity and support, to join us. Because together, we can change how this country supports families. We can ensure that no mother feels alone on the day of diagnosis. We can build a world where every child, no matter how different, has a chance to thrive. Together, we are a beacon, and beacons guide people home. The Kennedy Center erupted in a standing ovation. 1,000 people stood, applauding, crying, celebrating. But Victoria could only see 3 faces. Caleb, with tears of pride, Eleanor, beaming, and Thomas, who had stood spontaneously, rare for him with crowds, and was applauding, not just politely, but enthusiastically. And when his eyes met hers, He did something even rarer. He smiled, big, genuine, radiant. And in that moment, Victoria knew. She knew that every struggle had been worth it. Every tear, every sleepless night, every moment of doubt. It had all led to this. Not the award, not the recognition, but that smile. The smile of a boy who had been told he would never connect emotionally, that he would never understand love, that he would never have a meaningful life, and who was now about to go to one of the best music schools in the world, that he had friends, love, and a bright future, because someone refused to give up, because love didn't give up. 5 years later, Thomas Santos Richardson sat at the piano in Carnegie Hall, 21 years old, a Juilliard graduate, about to give his graduation debut concert. The room was packed. Lighthouse mothers who had known him since childhood, teachers from his entire educational journey. Sophia, now his musical and romantic partner, waited in the wings for their duet. And in the front row, side by side, Victoria, Caleb, and Eleanor, the family who had raised him, who had fought for him, who had chosen to see him not as a project to fix, but as a person to love. Before he began to play, Thomas did something unplanned. He stood up and walked to the microphone. "I don't normally speak at concerts," he began, his voice clear and confident. "Music is my preferred language, but today is special, so I'm going to use words." The room went quiet. "I'm autistic. Always have been, always will be. And for a long time, the world told me that was a limitation, that I would never achieve great things, that I was too different, too difficult too." But 3 people in this room refused to believe that. He looked at Victoria, my mother, who lost everything when I was diagnosed, but gained purpose, who transformed pain into movement that changed tens of thousands of lives, who taught me that difference isn't a flaw. He looked at Caleb, my father, who chose me when he didn't have to, who showed up in every crisis, every victory, every moment, who showed me that real love is action, not feeling. He looked at Eleanor, and my grandmother, who came back when she could have stayed away, who chose to do things differently, who proved that it's never too late to show up for someone you love. Thomas took a deep breath. The piece I'm going to play today is dedicated to them. It's called The Unthinkable. Because they did the unthinkable. They loved when it was easiest to give up. They stayed when it was easiest to leave. They believed when it was easiest to doubt. And because of them, I'm here. Not despite my autism, but with it. Complete. Whole. Happy. So this one's for you. For love that doesn't give up. For beacons that guide home. For family that chooses to stay. He returned to the piano, hands on the keys, and began to play. The music was epic. It told a story without words, struggle, pain, transformation, triumph. It was 11 years of journey distilled into 17 minutes of pure melody. And when it ended, when the last note echoed through Carnegie Hall, there wasn't a dry eye in the audience. Thomas stood, bowed, and for the first time in his career, deliberately maintained eye contact with the audience, allowing himself to be seen, to be vulnerable, to be authentically himself. And the audience responded with love, with acceptance, with celebration of who he was, all his, not despite his differences, but including them. Backstage afterward, Victoria hugged her son, her baby who was no longer a baby, her boy who was now a man, her greatest pride. "I'm so proud of you," she whispered. "I know. You tell me so all the time." Thomas smiled. "But today, I wanted you to know, I'm proud of you too. For everything you've built, for everything you've changed, for never giving up." "How could I give up?" Victoria said. "You are my purpose, my why, my reason to fight." "No," Thomas corrected gently. "I was your catalyst, but you are your own reason. You chose to transform pain into purpose. That was you, all of you." Caleb joined the embrace, and Eleanor, and Sophia, and all the family, blood and chosen, that had made this journey possible. And Victoria realized something profound. 11 years ago, when Dylan left, when everything fell apart, she thought it was the end. But it was only the beginning of discovering who she really was, the beginning of building a life that mattered, the beginning of proving that sometimes What seems like destruction is actually liberation in disguise. Because when you lose everything except what truly matters, you discover what truly matters. And what mattered? Love, purpose, community, fighting for those who can't fight for themselves, turning pain into help, building bridges where there were walls, and family, always family, not the one given by blood, but the one built by love. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel for more stories of overcoming, love, and redemption that will transform your perspective on family, purpose, and the incredible strength of the human spirit.